Good afternoon and welcome to this conference marking the 15th anniversary of the European Research Council. Today's event is organised by the CNRS, the French National Centre for Scientific Research, and the European Research Council in cooperation with the Collège de France. It takes place under the auspices of the French presidency of the Council of the European Union. Before we begin, I'd like to invite Antoine Petit, the CEO and Director of the CNRS, to say some words about the context in which we're meeting today.
Merci beaucoup. Au nom de l'ensemble des organisateurs et j'en suis certain de l'ensemble des participants, nous tenons à exprimer notre plus forte indignation devant l'invasion de l'Ukraine par les troupes russes. Nous condamnons bien sûr cette attitude. Nous tenons également à témoigner au peuple ukrainien notre profonde solidarité, notre total soutien. Nous espérons que de plus en plus de citoyens russes s'opposeront à la politique de leur gouvernement, comme l'ont fait ce week-end plusieurs centaines de scientifiques russes. La communauté internationale ne peut accepter une telle situation. Elle est mobilisée et elle restera mobilisée jusqu'à la fin du conflit.
Merci, Monsieur Petit.
Thank you, Mr. Petit.
15 years ago to the day, on the 28th of February 2007, the ERC was launched during the German presidency of the Council of the European Union. And in her speech at that event, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel said that the ERC had the potential to become a European Champions League of research. Today, we'll discuss the extent to which that prediction has come true, share some of the ERC's achievements over the last 15 years, and look together at the importance of frontier research for the future of Europe. Our online audience can join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag 15yearserc and ask our speakers questions via the YouTube chat. So to kick off, let's hear from Frédérique Vidal, French Minister of Higher Education, Research and Innovation. She wasn't able to be with us here in the studio today, but she sent us this video message.
There is a sound problem with the video. The interpreter apologizes. Despite the constraint of a busy agenda which did not allow me to be here today, I wanted to speak to you on this 15th anniversary of the Universal Council of Research, at the same time as France is the president of the Council of the European Union. I am very happy and satisfied to see the journey that we've been through, and we should all be very proud of the very important, ambitious and prestigious programs of funding of research in the world. In 2021, in May, the ERC has gone beyond 10,000 funded laureates, giving about 2/3 of these contracts to researchers, female and male, under 40 years old. The ERC has a key role in the blossoming of a new generation in Europe and contributes in revealing the quality of these projects led by female scientists, like we see through the progress of the rates of participation and success from one program to another. But beyond the quantitative quality, there is the qualitative one, which is also exceptional and must be commended. 20% of research funded by the European Research Council leads to true breakthroughs in knowledge, 50% to scientific breakthroughs, major ones, and over 25% to scientific contributions considered as decisive to make knowledge progress. The standards of the ERC are widely recognized by the actors of research, and the funding projects contribute widely to 1% of the most cited articles in the world, which shows their impact on international research. Because research, by definition, is international, it's a unique blend of cooperation and competition. And once again, the ERC has a frontline role. In international cooperation between researchers first, about 60% of scientific publications coming from works financed by the ERC involve international collaboration. Attractivity of Europe as well, because by supporting long-term research, curiosity, risk, boldness, openness, but also demanding, the ERC attracts people from all over the world. 18% of researchers funded by the ERC come from non-European countries. After 15 years of existence, the contribution of the ERC to scientific and technological progress in the large sense does not need to be proven anymore. Funding-wise, we went from 13.1 billion for Horizon 2020 to 16 billion for Horizon Europe. I can only wish that this contribution be consolidated, strengthened to support excellence. Because the strategy of excellence of the ERC is fundamental. It owes a lot to the action of Jean-Pierre Bourguignon, who I want to deeply thank for the essential role he has played, and I have no doubt that it will continue under the presidency of Maria. But let's look to the future as well. In the preparation of Horizon Europe, the Commission wanted the creation of the ERC, which has the same exigence of excellence as the ERC, supporting innovation. Because the European Council of Research also embodies an ideal of excellence at the service of citizens through fundamental research benefiting society. I deeply believe in the absolute necessity of fundamental science at the excellent level, at the service of knowledge. I'm also convinced that it is essential that we know how to mobilize this knowledge for technological or social progress and its effects on society and the economy. It is essential so that the society asks for more science and support its financing at the right level. Fundamental science irrigates science, exploratory, frontier science, led by knowledge, is the fertile soil for the entrepreneurs of tomorrow. 1,000 examples shown through this health crisis can prove that. The ERC will contribute more strongly to the effects of the frontier science through its articulation with the European Council of Innovation. In this regard, the Council of ERC and the Innovation Council had a common meeting in May 2021 to promote a solid collaboration. These organs have highlighted in a common release the importance of collaboration to help the project for validation of concept of the ERC to get closer to market. The results of the first call of the Transition EIC program in January 2022, destined to transform the results to the low TRL research projects, showed the place and value of fundamental research supported by ERC, because it is 25 of the 42 projects funded by the EIC Transition Project that come from the proof of concept program of the ERC. One last conviction that I want to share with you. At a time where the world is confronted to ecological, digital transitions of health crisis, you have also made the choice to highlight human and social sciences. I am convinced that if we do not think of these revolutions and challenges, if we only think about technological logs without thinking about the societal impacts, we will fail in supporting our societies in these transitions. We will fail at promoting the development of new relevant technologies and to project with trust and serenity in tomorrow's world. Knowledge research and the comprehension of the world in which we will have to live is a necessity for our societies. Under doubt that leads to anxiety and to looking inward. It is a political project in the noble sense of the term. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for contributing. I hope that your exchanges will be fruitful and benefit the beautiful European adventure that is the ERC.
Merci, Madame la Ministre, pour ce message
Thank you,
de
Madam Minister,
soutien.
for this message of
I'd like
support.
now to invite Antoine Petit, the CEO and Chairman of the CNRS, to share your opening remarks with us.
Donc, Madame la Ministre, Madame la Présidente du Conseil européen de la Recherche, chère Maria, Monsieur l'administrateur du Collège de France, cher Thomas, mes chers collègues présidents et présidentes du G6, G6 qui est une amicale européenne qui réunit donc le CNR italien, le CSIC espagnol, le Max Planck, Helmholtz et Leibniz en Allemagne, et donc le CNRS. Cher Jean-Pierre Bourguignon, vous permettrez également de rajouter cher Clément Beaune, secrétaire d'État en charge des affaires européennes, qui malgré un emploi du temps que vous imaginez chargé,
his very busy schedule, as I said earlier,
faire l'honneur et le plaisir
should
d'être
give us the
parmi
honor
nous
and the
tout à l'heure.
pleasure of being with
Mesdames
us
et messieurs,
later.
chers collègues,
Ladies and gentlemen, dear
célébrer le
colleagues,
15e anniversaire du
celebrating the
Conseil
15th
européen de la
anniversary of the
recherche
European Research
traduit pour le
Council
CNRS l'attachement
means for the
profond
CNRS
de
the
notre
deep
institution
attachment
qui a
of our
fêté ses 80
institution,
ans
which
il y a 2 ans
celebrated its
pour un
82nd
programme encore jeune,
anniversary
un programme
2 years
ambitieux
ago, for a
qui ne
young
cesse
and
de
ambitious
stimuler les
project that
ressources et
keeps
les capacités
stimulating
de
resources
notre
and
ancienne et
capacities
respectée maison.
of our old and
Déjà, lors de la
respected
précédente
institution.
présidence
During
française,
the last French
le CNRS
presidency
était au Collège de
already,
France
the
pour célébrer
CNRS was
à
at the
l'époque
Collège de
le
France
tout
to
premier
celebrate at the time
anniversaire de
the very
l'ERC.
first anniversary of the
Comme l'a
ERC.
évoqué notre ministre
As our
Frédéric
minister
Vidal,
said, Mr. Frédéric
figure,
Vidal,
après
Madame
15
Frédéric
années
Vidal, the
d'existence,
ERC, after 15 years of
parmi les
existence,
programmes phares
is
de
among
financement
the
de la
key
recherche
programs for
d'excellence
funding
en
of
Europe
excellence,
et au-delà des
excellency
frontières
research
européennes.
beyond the European
Programme
borders.
phare pour le CNRS,
A
car il
key
offre un espace
program for the
unique à la
CNRS
recherche
because it is a
fondamentale en
unique
Europe, une
space
recherche
for
de type
fundamental
exploratoire,
research in Europe, the
interdisciplinaire,
frontier
basée
science,
sur le long terme.
interdisciplinary, based in the long
Dans les
term.
ressorts essentiels de la recherche, la
By
curiosité,
supporting
la
the
liberté
essentials
intellectuelle,
of
le risque,
research,
mais aussi la
liberty,
rigueur et
curiosity,
l'exigence,
risk, but also
en
rigor
stimulant
and
le défi intellectuel.
high
pousse nos
standards.
chercheurs et nos
The
chercheuses à
ERC
donner le
pushes our
meilleur d'eux-mêmes.
researchers to give the best of
En cela,
themselves.
il représente bien plus qu'un
Through this,
simple
it
programme de
represents much
financement.
more than a simple
C'est un levier
program of
majeur
funding. It
pour
is a major
positionner la
lever
recherche
to
européenne
position
au
European
meilleur
research
niveau
at the
international.
best level internationally.
15 ans d'existence, c'est
15
une tranche
years
de
of
vie,
existence,
cela
it
peut
is a
paraître
slice of
long,
life.
mais c'est en
It
même
can
temps
seem like a
court
long
dans le
time, but
cycle
at the
de la
same time
recherche.
is short in the research
ARN
cycle.
messager,
The
algorithmes
ARN messenger and algorithm for
d'apprentissage,
research or CISO
toutes ces avancées
genetics,
scientifiques
all of
majeures,
these major
financées
breakthroughs
par
in
l'ERC,
science
comme
funded
l'a
by
rappelé
the
la ministre,
ERC, as
ont mis
the
plusieurs
minister
dizaines d'années pour donner
reminded
lieu à de
us,
véritables
took
innovations
over
brutes.
10 years to give
Il convient
birth
pourtant
to
de
these
reconnaître
breakthroughs.
que
It
les
is
acteurs
therefore
européens de la
important to recognize
recherche
that the actors of research in Europe, like the CNRS, can do even better to valorize their results and accelerate their application to the benefit of society. The relevance of the proof of concept program of the ERC and its potential as a bridge towards the European Innovation Council will be the subject of our second panel this afternoon. 15 years, it's also the time maybe that it took for the whole of the scientific communities in Europe to appropriate this new funding tool. We still have a lot of work to do. Even though the number of applications has gone by over 60% in these two programs, our margin of progress remains important. However, during these 15 years of the ERC and these two programs, I saluted over 700 colleagues at the Institute and were able to get a scholarship through this program. Thanks to them and to the support and administrative and financial staff, the CNRS is the first beneficiary to the ERC in France and in Europe, with a success rate slightly or very above the average nationally and at the European level. It shows the quality of the CNRS and our role that is crucial in research in Europe. We're honored by this first place, but we also have responsibilities to do better, which is the European strategy that we have recently quickly implemented to increase the participation of the CNRS to European funding. Better with the number of applications, especially those of women, but also more projects in the human and social sciences. Like the Minister said, and like we will say during the last panel, at a time where climate, health and energy challenges, but also the emergence of new technologies like artificial intelligence have an upsetting effect on technology, we need a reflection and appropriation of these transitions. As a pluridisciplinary institute, the CNRS has a large number of scientists, sociologists, historians, and so on, who are capable, thanks to the ERC, to fulfill these missions. The success of the CNRS at the ERC also makes it necessary that we preserve and strengthen the capacities of funding of the program. As people will say better than I can, like Mr. Bourguignon, twice more people have judged this excellent by the ERC will deserve financing. It is also a true asset in Europe, which must be seized to deploy all of its capacity for leadership. This willingness to defend and promote fundamental research in Europe is one of the raison d'être of the G6, which I mentioned earlier, and I thank my colleagues who are here today to debate these challenges with Jean-Pierre Bourguignon in a few moments. Lastly, in this period of high political tension, I want to insist on how much it is the role of the CNRS and all our partners, universities, organisms in France and in Europe, to express our solidarity with our colleagues in the European Union who, for political reasons or economical reasons, with no link to their capacities, are not able to fully benefit of the ERC's financing. This is why the CNRS intends to commit to collaborate with the European Commission to fight for the inclusion of all these scientists. Dear Maria Liptin, in the name of all the researchers, male and female of the CNRS, I wish a very happy anniversary to the ERC. We count on you to continue to support our scientists and promote fundamental research at a very high level in Europe. You can count on the support of the CNRS for this.
Merci, Monsieur Petit. And I would like to hand over directly now to Thomas Romer, Chairman of the Collège de France, to share with us your opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Madame la Ministre de l'Enseignement supérieur, la Recherche et l'Innovation, Madame la Présidente de l'ERC, Monsieur le Président Directeur Général du CNRS, cher Antoine,
Monsieur le Directeur du CNRS, cher Antoine.
Les conditions sanitaires n'ont malheureusement pas permis de vous accueillir au Collège de France
unfortunately not allowed us to welcome you in the Collège de France like we wanted to, but I am still happy to welcome you here in the name of the Collège de France and to allow us to meet for this event, which is hybrid and allows us all to have a say. The European Research Council is a remarkable tool and that is unique for the research at a very high level for all fields in Europe. Like Madam Minister said earlier, human and social scientists are sometimes left aside, but they have their full role. And I want to insist on the necessity to have a whole science and not just utilitarian science. The ERC contributes decisively to the position of European research at the highest level in the world. I salute its action in the name of the French academic community at a time where Europe is more than ever our horizon, and I would like to affirm in these dramatic circumstances our solidarity with our colleagues, teachers, professors and researchers in Ukraine. The Collège de France will fully mobilize its energies for the post-program, a program for the urgent income of Ukrainians, which has been set up. We will welcome a certain number of academics from Ukraine very, very soon.
nous devons nous réjouir,
But
nous devons nous
we have
réjouir
to
des 15
rejoice
ans de l'ERC
for the 15 years of the ERC and for the Collège de
raisons
France
spécifiques.
for 3 specific
La
reasons.
première, c'est
The first
une
one,
raison qui est liée à l'essence
a
même du Collège
reason
de
that
France.
has to do with the very essence of
Le
the Collège de
Collège de France, à
France. The
l'extérieur
Collège de
de la France,
France,
n'est pas toujours
outside
bien
of France,
connu.
is not
Mais le
very
Collège
well
de
known,
France a
but
une
the
tradition
Collège de France
humaniste
has
et
a
est fidèle à ses
humanist
origines, à
tradition.
sa
It is
tradition.
faithful to
Il a
its
toujours
origins and
montré
its
son
tradition. It
engagement
has
en
always
faveur de
shown
la
its
dimension
engagement
européenne,
to the
de la
European
culture,
dimension
de la
of culture,
recherche et de la
research,
diffusion des
and
savoirs.
the spread of
Tout
knowledge.
récemment encore, nous avons
Very
créé
recently,
une
we
chaire
have
annuelle
created
qui s'appelle
an
l'invention
annual
de
chair
l'Europe par les
called
langues
the
et
Invention
les
of
cultures.
Europe by Languages
Le
and
premier
Cultures.
professeur invité
The first
est l'écrivain
guest
Alberto
professor
Manguel.
is the
Nous
writer
avons
Alberto Manguel.
organisé notre
We have
colloque de rentrée
organized
sur le thème Inventer
a
l'Europe, en
conference
offrant au grand
in the
public
fall
un cycle
called
de
Inventing
conférences par
Europe
des
with a cycle of
personnalités sur les
conferences
enjeux et les
through
défis de
very
l'Europe,
famous
de la connaissance.
experts through
La seconde
spreading
raison,
knowledge.
plus
The
circonstancielle,
second
vient
reason,
amplifier la
more
première.
to do with circumstances,
Alors que la
amplifies the
France
first
occupe
one.
la présidence du
While
Conseil de
France
l'Union
is
européenne,
president
le
of
Collège de
the
France s'engage à nouveau dans le
European
débat sur
Council, we
l'avenir
are once
de la
again
science
in the
dans notre
debate
continent.
about the future of science in our
Il a nourri
continent.
des travaux de la réunion
It
informelle des ministres
has
européens de l'enseignement
informed
supérieur et de la
research
recherche
from the
le
European
25 janvier dernier.
Research
Et le Collège de
Council,
France va
and the
accueillir
Collège
le
de
12 mars
France
la nuit
will
européenne des idées,
host on
consacrée à un
March
forum
12th
de la
a
jeunesse
forum
européenne et
for
organisé
European
en
youth,
partenariat avec
organized in
l'Institut français
partnership
et la
with the
chaîne de
French
télévision
Institute
Arte.
and the French
Vous serez bien
German
sûr
channel
le
Arte.
bienvenu.
You will,
Tout est
of
possible
course, be
maintenant
welcome.
à ce grand débat en public
Everything is
sur les
possible
enjeux
in
du
this
présent
large
et de
public
l'avenir
debate
des jeunes européens,
about
des
the
jeunes qui vont
future
aussi faire
of
de la recherche
European
et qui sont
scientists
l'avenir de
who
la recherche.
are the future
La
of
troisième
research.
raison touche
The third
précisément à
reason
l'événement qui nous
is
réunit
about
cet
this
après-midi.
very event
En effet, la
that
création en
unites us
2007
today.
de l'ERC
The
et sa
creation in
montée en
2007
puissance
of the
dans les années
ERC
qui
and
ont
its
suivi
rise
ont
during the
coïncidé
following years
avec
have
la structuration
coincided
actuelle
with
de
the
la recherche au Collège
structuring
de France en unité
in
mixte
Collège de
avec le
France, the
CNRS
mixed
et en
unit
équipe de
with the
recherche au
CNRS
sein
and a
de ces
research
unités.
team within its unit.
Au cours de cette période de
During this
2007 à
period,
2010
from 2007 to
jusqu'à aujourd'hui, le
2010
Collège de France est
until
toujours
today,
engagé
the Collège
dans
de
une
France is always
politique
committed
active du
in
développement
active
de ces
policy
capacités
of
de
development of these
recherche
capacities
à
for
travers le
research
recrutement des
through
enseignants-chercheurs
recruitment of
et
teachers and researchers
d'une vingtaine de laboratoires.
and around
Il est
20
tutelle académique
laboratories.
principale de 6
It
centres
is,
et héberge une trentaine d'équipes de
It
recherche.
hosts about 30 teams for
Ces
research.
laboratoires sont attractifs,
These labs
obtiennent des
are
évaluations
attractive,
nationales et internationales
are
excellentes,
nationally and
et ces
internationally ranked,
enseignants-chercheurs de
and
nombreuses
its
distinctions de
academics and researchers
Évidemment, on peut
are
aussi
highly
se poser la
distinguished.
question comment faut
We can also
évaluer la
wonder
recherche,
how
mais je
to
pense que ça sera en
evaluate
effet
research, but I
abordé
think
tout à l'heure.
we will talk about that later.
Quant à l'ERC, le Collège de France est partenaire d'une trentaine
And the Collège de
d'ERC.
France
Il est
is a
porteur direct
partner
de
with
8
about
ERC,
30 different
dont 2
ERC
proof of
projects,
concept, 2 starting,
including 2
1 consolidator
POC,
et 3
1
advanced.
consolidator, and
Surtout
3
dans les domaines de
advanced
l'humanité,
grant,
je
and
suis très
1
fier de ça,
in the field
dont
of
le PI
the
est mon collègue
humanities.
François Desroches,
And my
professeur au
colleague
Collège de
François
France,
Desroches,
qui est
professor at the
présent
Collège de
parmi nous
France,
et qui
who is
interviendra
with us
cet
today and
après-midi
will
dans
be
une
part of
table
one of our
ronde
panels
sur
this afternoon
Humanity
on
and social
the
science
humanities
for
and social
future.
science for the future
Donc
of
vous l'avez
Europe.
compris, le Collège de France est
So
particulièrement
as you can
impliqué
see,
dans
the
la
Collège de
dimension
France has
européenne
been
de la recherche
very
et
much
nous sommes
involved in
particulièrement honorés
developing
d'être
the
partenaires
research
de cette célébration
area
des
in
15 ans
Europe,
de
and we are
l'ERC.
very happy
Merci
to
de
be
nous
part
avoir
of this
associés.
celebration of the
Merci
15 years
à
of
toutes
the
et à
ERC. Thank you for inviting us, and thank
Merci
you
à
all.
vous, Monsieur Romer. And now it's my
contribution.
pleasure to introduce our final speaker in this opening session, Maria Leptin, the President of the European Research Council.
Thank you, Tony. Dear Minister Vidal, dear Director Petit, dear Chairman Römer, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by thanking the 3 other speakers in this session for these wonderful words of support, and especially the Minister, Frédéric, for your impassioned support of the ideals, not only of the ERC, but also of the other funding organizations who are assembled here this afternoon. It was really wonderful to see this coming right from the top. So I'm obviously delighted to be here today to celebrate 15 years of the European Research Council. I myself have been president of the Scientific Council of the ERC only since November. And so the credit for the ERC's successes obviously don't go to me, but to all my predecessors and my colleagues of the current and former scientific councils. as well as the dedicated and professional and committed staff of the ERC Executive Agency. So I'm very glad to see here today Evelyn Krone and Kurt Mehlhorn of the current Scientific Council, and of course my predecessor, Jean-Pierre Bourguignon, who's made it so easy for me to take over. I want to thank them all. They and their predecessors deserve the thanks for what is being celebrated here today. And of course, it makes me even easier to praise the achievements of this fantastic organization. Since I've become president, I've often been asked, what is my vision for the ERC? What are my priorities? My answer has been that I do not have grand plans for the ERC. I know the ERC well. I've served as panel chairs both for the advanced grants and the synergy grant calls, and I know the ERC to be a great organization. So what I think it needs is to be protected and preserved. Part of preserving and protecting the ERC is, of course, to try to secure its long-term budget. But what we also need to preserve and protect is our founding principles, the principles of excellence, independence, and supporting curiosity-driven frontier research across the whole range of knowledge. And we've heard this from our other speakers this afternoon too, that this is really shared need, that it's not just the science that might go to application, but the fulfillment of human curiosity, which notably includes the social sciences and the humanities. So being proud of what the ERC has done in saying, I want to protect and preserve, does not mean that we can afford complacency and inertia. Any organization that wishes to represent excellence has to be self-critical, permanently look at whether the way it's functioning, whether its goals remain appropriate, and see where they must evolve. And this is why, for example, we're currently taking great interest in the debates about reforming research assessment, especially assessing the output and the persons of the young researchers. And also while we're examining whether there would be any benefits for our researchers if we move to a lump sum funding. So the world around us changes, we must change along with it. And I hope you'll hear more about these issues and other possible changes in the near future. So today is a day to celebrate the first 15 years of the ERC, and we love and need celebration. And I'm certainly looking forward to listening to the sessions for this afternoon, to hearing the many wonderful speakers that have been invited. I really feel good among what I consider friends and colleagues. But of course, unfortunately, and with real sadness, I cannot end there as I would like to. And it's not only because of the sad situation that we're witnessing this very week with the terrible events in Europe that we thought we had banished to history, with the dictator ordering his tanks across internationally recognized borders. This forces us to look beyond this event. And I'm grateful for Antoine for his strong words on this topic. I should also interject that I'm glad to know that many of my colleagues in institutions that I know and others are offering to accept refugee scientists into their labs, into their offices, and I hope this will be followed by many others. This is really a time where more than ever we have to stand together, and where we need to be reminded that Europe, in its science and research, must stand together. So, like I said, we can never be complacent. We can never stand still. We can never declare mission accomplished, whether it's in defending democracy or in being an excellent research organization. May I remind you that Europe has long invested less in research and innovation than its international competitors. We've never caught up with the US, and China has now overtaken us. So Europe may be big on ambitions, but we've got to put our money where our mouth is. And Europe has not necessarily been good at providing the means to achieve these high ambitions. Whatever our vision is for the future, whether it's a return to a more open and cooperative global science, or whether it's seeing Europe as being independent, whether you want to call it strategic autonomy or whatever vision we have, it is clear that we cannot achieve any of these ambitions if we're scientific and technological followers. We've got to be leaders. Can we say that we are reaching our full potential today? I think Europe needs to invest in the full spectrum of capabilities, from developing the latest cutting-edge science, as we've heard, to incubating a new generation of innovative startup companies, of which we will hear more this afternoon. If we want to maintain our global standing and preserve the freedom and quality of life of our citizens, we must act.
Thank you, Maria. And as you said, we have some fantastic speakers and discussions coming up later this afternoon. But before we move on to the first session, let's discover together a short video summarising some of the ERC's key achievements and the developments that have happened over the last 15 years since the creation of the ERC. Welcome back to our first panel discussion this afternoon, which will look at the ERC, Frontier Science for the Benefit of All. The panel brings together distinguished representatives of the G6 network, which unites 6 large multidisciplinary research-performing organizations located in Europe, the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique in France, the Consiglio Nazionale delle Ricerche in Italy, the Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas in Spain, the Helmholtz-Gemeinschaft Deutsche Forschungszentren, the Leibniz-Gemeinschaft and the Max-Planck-Gesellschaft from Germany. And our panel will be chaired by Jean-Pierre Bourguignon, a mathematician by training who's had a long and distinguished career at the CNRS, also teaching at the École Polytechnique and being director of the Institut des Autres Études Scientifiques. He was president of the European Research Council from 2014 to 2019 and returned as ad interim president from July 2020 until August 2021. So I hand over to you, Jean-Pierre.
Thank you very much, Tony. I'm very pleased to take part in the event marking the 15th anniversary of the European Research Council and honored to have been asked to moderate this first roundtable. The ERC has already a long history, more than 10,000 grantees, among them more than 6,000 who got a grant to support their research before they had reached 40 years of age. Almost 20 billion euro financing ambitious project. Still, the start was not simple. In the late 1990s, the scientific community expressed the clear view that the EU framework program should be given the possibility to finance projects submitted by individual researchers, almost all with a team in mind. Initiative for Science in Europe was the structure that lobbied for such a project. The most active scientific community to support the idea was that of biologists. At the political level, people like José Mariano Gago, then minister in Portugal, but also Commissioner Philippe Busquin, pushed efficiently to make it possible. The countries that were the most mobilized were not the larger ones. They often had the feeling that they had the appropriate means and structures, but rather countries like Denmark, Sweden, Portugal, and the Netherlands. After a tough battle to determine the structure managing the ERC, a compromise could be found. The ERC would be part of the Framework Programme 7 with a real autonomy guaranteed by the fact that its governance was given to its independent scientific council. The ERC could finally get off the ground in 2007 thanks to the dedication of a number of people also in the European Commission. Of course, we should not forget the extraordinary role played by the founding fathers and mothers, the members of the first ERC Scientific Council, chaired initially by Fotis Kafatos and then by Elgar Novotny. They had to shape the ERC from nothing, and it seems that they set the right format and standards, enabling a trust relation with the scientific community. We start this roundtable by listening to a special statement from an ERC grantee whose action has gained him an extraordinary international recognition and visibility, Uğur ŞAHIN. We are highly grateful to him to have accepted to record this testimony in spite of his extremely busy schedule.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored and humbled to speak today at the European Research Council's 15th anniversary event. I am Uğur ŞAHIN, scientist, professor at the University Hospital of the Johannes Gutenberg University Mainz, and CEO and co-founder of BioNTech. In January 2020, when the genetic sequence of the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus became available, our team at BioNTech initiated an mRNA vaccine discovery program to fight the pandemic. Our project Lightspeed was able to discover our vaccine candidate BNT162b2 as the first effective COVID-19 vaccine in less than 11 months. It is the first mRNA drug and the first drug of any type with proven efficacy as a COVID-19 vaccine. It received conditional authorization or was authorized for emergency use in many countries worldwide. More than 1 billion people worldwide have already been vaccinated with our vaccine, saving millions of lives. The discovery validates messenger RNA as a major new tool to help to address the pandemic and other potential threats. Well, this recent part of the story is publicly well known. What is often not told is the long story behind, which is more relevant for today's event. My partner Özlem Türeci and I have studied mRNA vaccines and the immune system for nearly 3 decades. We believe that mRNA had a broad transforming potential and could fight diseases by modulating and redirecting the immune system. Our work has always been driven by 2 passions. One is curiosity, our desire as scientists to explore uncharted territory, to understand how biology works, the mechanisms to solve difficult puzzles, and to overcome technological challenges. The second is purpose, our desire as physicians to help patients to translate science into survival. Curiosity and purpose, they do not represent opposites. We believe that both perfectly complete each other. Our original vision was to redirect the patient's immune system to fight their cancer. Since every cancer is unique, we had the idea to create mRNA vaccines that were individually tailored to each cancer patient, a concept that sounded like science fiction. Our vision served us like a lighthouse in the distance that gave us direction in our research. As scientists, we didn't voice this bold vision because there were so many unknowns. There seemed to be so many reasons that what we had in mind was utopia and would not work. When we started our research, there was no evidence that mRNA vaccines are an important research area. There was only a small community of mRNA scientists, not really recognized, and many who had started to work on mRNA left the field later on. If there had been any prioritization of research fields for funding at that time, it certainly would not have been mRNA vaccines. We were lucky that there was no prioritization. So we benefited from an unbiased research funding and were able to apply for and receive funding for our pioneering research. Initially from various national organizations in Germany, later also from European framework programs, and well, from European Research Council Advanced Grant Program. These programs helped us to build our research group and do the pioneering scientific groundwork at the Johannes Gutenberg University in Mainz. Over more than 20 years, we made various discoveries, allowing us to effectively deliver mRNA exactly into the right cells in the human body, improve the stability of mRNA, achieve strong translation into protein, and mount effective immune responses in vaccinated individuals. When we realized that we could no longer fund our research through academia alone, we started a company. As my partner likes to say, more out of desperation than a desire to become entrepreneurs. This was not easy for us. And it was not made easy for us to balance our roles at the company and at the university. It helped no matter where we worked, we always stick to the same vision and the same scientific principles. When faced with the COVID-19 pandemic, we realized that the solutions that we had developed for cancer immunotherapy were also suitable for developing a vaccine against SARS-CoV-2. The rest of the story is known. We have been successful, not only scientifically and medically, but also economically. The revenue from our vaccine will give us the financial means to realize our original vision to develop an individualized cancer immunotherapy. Even go beyond the original vision to develop mRNA vaccines and therapies for other diseases, such as malaria, tuberculosis, and autoimmunity. The proceeds from the patents licensed to the company at the founding will give our university the opportunity to further expand basic research at the site. We humbly recognize that this breakthrough is based on accomplishments of the whole scientific community. We are pioneers, yet we were never alone. We had our team, and we are deeply rooted in the scientific community. I can cite hundreds of scientific papers from different scientific fields from which we have learned. And our work has contributed to research breakthroughs of other scientists. The beauty and power of science relies on sharing knowledge. This is essential to fertilize progress across different disciplines. Such scientific breakthroughs are always a sign of a functioning ecosystem, an ecosystem that also values and funds frontier research of any kind. As Louis Pasteur used to say, basic science and its application belong together like the tree and its fruit. It is the cumulative impact of scientific and technology discoveries from various fields over the past 30 years that help to transform a mere concept into a highly potent and versatile technology platform with ideal properties for drug development. Is there a learning for the future direction of the European Research Council? Most certainly it is. Our example shows that groundbreaking innovation requires decades of research and contribution from multiple research frontiers until it reaches maturity to provide benefit for humanity. The success of an idea is rarely based on a single discovery, but on long-term persistence and grit of early pioneers, and on sustained financial support of believers. It depends on the formation of a new research field, interdisciplinary collaborations, and continued funding of a research community over years until a critical mass is achieved. And what is the next big science to fund? Well, it is difficult to make predictions about the future. To borrow a quote from Steve Jobs, we can't connect the dots looking forward. We can only connect them looking backwards. So we have to continue to invest and trust that the dots will somehow connect in our future. What is sure is that we will live in a time of unprecedented grand challenges of global dimension and with relevance for humanity. We can address these challenges only if we continue and further intensify overall funding and investments into frontier and applied research and enable their cross-fertilization. I wish the European Research Council happy birthday and a bright future.
Thank you very much, Uğur, ŞAHIN, for your wonderful contribution. Now we can turn to the presentations or initial statement by the presidents of the G6. And I turn myself to Maria Carrozza. So as president of the Consiglio Nazionale delle Ricerche, do you see the ERC as a help in your efforts to transform the Italian research landscape?
Thank you. Thank you to everybody. I am happy to be here and speaking about ERC, European Research Council, as a president, in my capacity of president of CNR. To me and for CNR, ERC is an opportunity to have a model for supporting basic and fundamental science, and also to support freedom and independence in selecting and defining the landscape for future science. I think that science is evolving so much today that we need individual grant scheme and excellence-based assessment of research projects in order to shape the future of science. And I think it's fundamental for me to get this inspiration in order to support the reform of CNR. We are in the middle of a reform and we are trying to change our system and to make our mission better thanks to the inspiration to the different models. So I think that the European Research Council scheme is a sort of model to integrate national funding program and international to attract scientists and also to have scientists something to emulate. The success stories of different scientists performing curiosity-driven and also excellent research is fundamental in order to make the motivation for achieving and making purpose and curiosity-driven new projects. So I am happy to be here. I state the support of CNR for the future of European Research Council and also for all ideas that we can share together in order to make this open science-based model for the European research area.
Thank you very much for your kind words and also a perspective about changing the CNR. I'm turning now to President Menéndez de Rosa. The Spanish National Research Council is a multidisciplinary public research organization covering frontier and oriented research. Could you comment on what you see as a role of the ERC with your experience of leading an institution that covers very broadly the knowledge value chain?
Thank you, Jean-Pierre. Good afternoon, everybody, and congratulations to ERC and CNRS and College de France for convening this event and celebration. I am very pleased to join it and to share this session with all of you, including the audience at home. These 15 years of ERC have demonstrated the great impact that frontier research has on the quality of the innovation that is carried out today in Europe. I will try to develop this very briefly in my following words. We know that not all types of innovation have identical impact on society. When value knowledge has deeper roots in science and research, innovation is produced with capital letters, and wealth and quality jobs are created. Disruptive innovation requires three fundamental elements: excellent science at the origin, an adequate articulation of the so-called innovation ecosystem, and finally, adequate investments. We also know that if the first link fails in the pathway from groundbreaking frontier science to breakthrough innovation, we lose all chances to contribute to the innovation ecosystem. That our science is excellent at the world level, no one can doubt it. ERC and its 15 years of perseverance and strong support on frontier research remain as the European flagship. However, some doubts could come from the ability of our innovation ecosystems to transform our knowledge in benefit of society. And it is here that I would like to emphasize my optimism and additional recognition to ERC based on the recently available results of Pillar 3 of Horizon Europe, Innovative Europe, particularly the European Innovation Council Pathfinder Open and the EIC Transition. These programs follow different funding schemes to ERC, and we could anticipate a higher rate of success for those applicants with more experience in challenge-based research. However, due to some commonalities between both programs, the ERC and the EIC, that is the expected novelty and excellence, experienced ERC researchers are being very competitive in the EIC Pathfinder. And the same goes to EIC transition funds, where a high success rate has been observed for those applicants coming from Pillar 1. The following session, of course, will cover this transition more in detail, and I am going to finish now highlighting that these 15 years of ERC have become the landmark for fundamental research all over the world. And from the Spanish National Research Council, from CSIC, I would like to tell you that we will maintain our efforts to ensure that the actual governance of ERC, with the leadership of an independent scientific council, is fully preserved. And equally, we support that the financial resources allocated to ERC increase accordingly to the already demonstrated success, and more to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosa. Now I'm turning to President Wissler. Lieber Ottmar, the Helmholtz-Gemeinschaft is a comprehensive research organization which supports a number of multidisciplinary research teams. How is the ERC helping you in your endeavors?
Well, first of all, Jean-Pierre, it's a pleasure to be here today. As you know, we are a family of 18 national labs in Germany with one major mission, and that is to carry on long-term interdisciplinary research to address some of the real grand challenges for research on society, be it energy, climate issues, health, and a few others. And in our programs, we rely on a number of major elements, quite a portfolio based on fundamental research, but also with the ambition to extend research into transfer and translation. High disciplinarity is part of our DNA, long-term research funding, which you need for this kind of mission. We often rely on excellent cutting-edge research infrastructures, and we also put a lot of emphasis on teaming up with strategic partners, cooperation, interaction at all levels. But at the end of the day, the key asset we have is brain power and talented people. That is what it is all about. And this is, of course, where ERC comes in. A splendid opportunity for funding for some of our most talented scientists to do exploratory research. What I also admire a lot is this idea of providing generous support at different stages of your career as a scientist. Starting grants, advanced grants, but also quite an attractive additional portfolio, be it the synergy idea, the consolidators, proof of concept, just to name a few. I think we should never underestimate what fantastic recognition the ERC provides for scientists. It's a real fantastic addition to your CV when you can state, I'm an ERC grantee. And what you have achieved is a real benchmark for the European Champions League of scientists. Of course, the pillar of cutting-edge basic research. These days, there's a lot of excitement about translation and applied research, and there is many political programs which focus on transfer or translation. But of course, without long-term fundamental research, there will be no translation or disruptive transfer. And Uğur presented this very impressively in his presentation on BioNTech. And last but not least, ERC is also an opportunity for distinguished colleagues to serve on some of your review panels. That is also a very important task. So we are enthusiastic supporters of the ERC, and we strongly rely on it. And I would very much like to endorse what Maria said about the ERC, the future of European research, and of course also about the horrible disaster we face these days in the Ukraine. I would also like to endorse what Uğur pointed out a few minutes ago, and the question we may want to discuss this afternoon: how can we support others to follow in his and his wife's footsteps? What a fantastic story. And last but not least, I think Rosa is absolutely right. With the new instruments in place now, ERC and EIC, it would be really attractive to consider interesting sort of links and interactions between these two programs, both targeted to brilliant individuals. So much for the moment. And happy birthday, of course.
Thank you so much, Otmar. Now I'm turning to Matthias Kleiner, who is not with us, but will be able to speak to us. So, Matthias, you're with us? Yes, wonderful. The question I will pose to you, lieber Matthias, from the point of view, you are now the president of the Leibniz Gemeinschaft, but when the ERC was created 15 years ago, you were the president of the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft. How do you see the development of the ERC compared to the vision that prevailed at the time?
Thank you very much, dear Jean-Pierre, dear colleagues and friends. On a more peaceful day, I would say, what a wonderful day, but obviously it's not. But 15 years ago, it was really a wonderful day to open the ERC with this wonderful event in Berlin under the eyes of all the top people from international science organizations. I remember Fotis Kafatos, I remember Annette Schavan, Janos Potočnik, and many others. Ed Ludwig Wienacker, my predecessor at the DFG, was there as the Secretary General then of the ERC. I think our hopes and expectations we had there in those days that the ERC could impact first on the EU programs concerning excellence, second on the national funding of excellent research, curiosity-driven research in countries where there was no mechanism to do so. So to be the one excellent-driven research funding, and in other countries where we had such instruments to be an additional one. So I think these expectations were fulfilled 150%, I would say. I think to fund curiosity-driven research in an autonomy, in an independent situation, is a task for democratic societies and for the European Commission, for the European Union, because we have freedom of science, which is so important, exactly to see in this present days. But I think society, politicians must only give this freedom as a saying, but also to provide the material needs to live this freedom. And the ERC is definitely one of these wonderful instruments to support freedom of science, to support autonomy of science. And so the ERC must be autonomous. We had a lot of discussions in those years concerning the autonomy, the ERC as a part of a framework program. At the end, I must say, also from a point of view of a member of the Scientific Council for some years, the development was really, really good. And so nobody, I would say, in the European science community could now imagine to have the ERC not as an instrument of excellence. Maybe concerning the success rate, it could be a little better because from my experiences as a DFG president, 20% is a kind of lower limit of frustration. Maybe 40 to 50% is a upper limit of quality. So I guess 15 to 20% success rate would be much better. So the ERC must have more money. Thank you for now.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Now I'm turning to Mr. Neizert, who will be representing the Max Planck Gesellschaft today. So thank you very much for joining us from Munich. From the point of view of the Max Planck Gesellschaft that you represent today, what are the main characteristics of the ERC that, in your opinion, have been key for its success?
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Today we celebrate the 50th birthday of the ERC. And first of all, I would like to extend the congratulations of the Max Planck Society, and in particular the congratulations of Martin Stratmann, who could not arrange to attend the event today. Today, however, one cannot feel like celebrating in view of the violations of international law and the war on our continent. And so our thoughts go out to the Ukrainian ERC grantees and their families, and especially also to the first and so far only ERC grantee awarded in 2020, being hosted by an organization in Ukraine. Anyway, with a view of the 50 years of existence of this institution, I must also remember typical 50th birthdays of young people, in particular the respective birthdays of my own children, and therefore please allow me to draw some parallels. Often we experience rebellious personalities at this age, questioning familiar principles and predefined structures. This is primarily exhausting for parents, of course, who to some extent have made themselves comfortable in taken for granted circumstances and who tend to shy away from changes in the world of ideas, and who want to retain control. However, if adults want to live up to their genuine responsibilities, they must first have patience, a lot of patience, but they also have a lot of trust in the new generation, which sees the world through different eyes with great curiosity and novel ideas. And this is exactly what also ERC stands for, supporting curiosity and facilitating novel ideas. We know in science that we gain new insights only if we question what is known and proven. And in the long term, it is precisely these new, sometimes surprising findings that offer solutions to problems that we do not even know about today. Regarding ERC, it is precisely for this reason that the ERC, aiming to advance disruptive research approaches at the frontiers of knowledge, is highly dependent on this trust of its parents and sponsors. The founding fathers and mothers have, sometimes with great effort, equipped the ERC with fundamental capabilities and skills with the aim that disruption and revolution on the long term will be transformed into innovation and evolution for the benefit of mankind. And this can only succeed also in the future if the ERC, like a young person, can develop its great potential in freedom and self-determination. ERC therefore needs autonomously designed and managed development spaces that allow breakthroughs. In the past, the ERC has proven that it deserves this trust. Examples of this success have been shown just recently. In addition to patience, trust, and encouragement, the creation of a self-determined human life ultimately requires one more thing, and that's money. This applies equally to young people and to the ERC. Investment in the next generation is just as well spent as investment in an excellent basic research. In other words, investing in the ERC is investing in the future of Europe. Now looking ahead, when we will celebrate the 30th anniversary in 15 years, the ERC should of course have retained its present youthfulness. And therefore, the comparison with a young person ends here. Basically, the ERC must always remain 15 years old. In this respect, we wish that the ERC can continue its successful mission in trust and autonomy for enabling new findings of highest quality and, in doing so, breakthroughs in science in Europe. It is also what remains is to be hoped that the necessary framework condition remains stable and sufficient, and if not preferential support will be provided in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Neizert, and please extend my greetings to President Stratmann. Now I'm turning to Antoine Petit for the CNRS, and the question I want to pose to you is the CNRS has a number of ERC grantees. Not so long ago, synergy grants have been introduced by the ERC Scientific Council with a hope to create a natural space for interdisciplinary research. How do you feel about the move? Would you favor other innovations in the ERC portfolio?
Well, first of all, I would recall what I said in my welcome speech, that a lot of very good projects judged by the Scientific Council are not yet funded. And this is a pity. And in the testimony of Uğur Sayın, which should be shown to all politicians, I think it's clear that we have to use these materials. And so I think the priority should go on classical grants, if I may. And I would like to recall that criticisms which is sometimes made to the ERC, that the fact that the grants are individual grants, I think it's really an unfair criticism, and the result presentation of ERC has clearly shown that behind each grantee there is a group of people, and so these grants really benefit to much more scientists than the grantees themselves. Nevertheless, I think it's good to have complementary tools. it's true for POC, proof of concept, but it's also true for synergy grants. I think that these synergy grants are really useful to address, in particular, social questions, social problems where you need precisely this pluri or interdisciplinary approach, including often humanities and social sciences scientists. So I think we have to find a good balance to have, I think the most part of the funds should go to the classical grants, but from my point of view, it's very good to have this POC with the transition, the necessary transition with EIC that has been already mentioned, but also these synergy grants allow to face more, as you said, pluridisciplinary problems, more social questions, and I think that should be encouraged too.
Thank you very much for your comments. So thank you all to your contribution for this point of view of the G6 presidents on the ERC on the occasion of the 15th anniversary. So I give the floor back to Tony for the continuation.
Thank you very much, Jean-Pierre. We did have a few minutes left if you or the panel members wanted to address any questions. And we have one question already that's come in online from a member of the audience who's been watching us, who asks via the YouTube chat, or who suggests that the EU should create a funding grant for young Ukrainian talents who are trapped in the country right now. I don't know if you or any of the other panel members would like to comment.
As you know, the difficulty for such a move is, of course, that in order for them to be efficient, they have to be quick. And usually this kind of, to set up the whole thing is not easy. But for sure, I understand the plea, and I'm sure that many institutions are going to use their means in the most flexible way to do such a thing. In the case of ERC, it's flexibility, immediate reactivity is definitely not easy to handle for very structural reasons. But of course, this has to be kept in our mind very much, because I think we need to help our Ukrainian colleagues in the most efficient way.
I think Mr. Wiesler wanted to come in as well on this question.
Maybe two aspects to that. I think this is probably not the primary task for ERC, but I'm very confident that many European research organizations, including ours, that many governments will establish programs on short notice to make sure that we can support Ukrainian talents at all levels. But this, of course, raises another point which I would like to touch upon, and that is when you sort of evaluate the European research area or Europe as a research continent, we still face this major problem of divide. There's a number of countries which are very strong, which heavily invest into research and development, but there is quite a majority of countries who don't or can't. This is something I think we must address now, also in light of these new developments in the Ukraine, which may help Europe to somehow, move closer together. And that is, of course, an interesting question. If the ERC could make a contribution to sort of filling this gap between European member states by tandem scenarios, twinning ideas, or others. I think that is something we should seriously consider for the future, and there ERC could make a contribution.
Thank you for this suggestion.
I think Antoine wanted to come in as well.
I agree on the fact that probably we have to go fast and to be very efficient and reactive, and we have already some programs, national programs, and I would like to emphasize on what explained Thomas Romer, the head of Collège de France. We had in France the POSE program, which has been built to welcome people from Syria or Afghanistan, and can be used also for our colleagues from Ukraine. And it's absolutely it's operational right now, and I think it's probably better to face the current situation.
Okay, well, if there aren't any further comments, I would like to thank Jean-Pierre very much and the speakers in this first panel session this afternoon. It's been a very interesting and rich discussion. Just a heads up, our next session is going to be tackling innovation. So please go ahead and post your questions already in the YouTube chat for our speakers who will be joining us shortly. You can also participate in the online conversation on Twitter using the hashtag 15yearserc, and it's great to see a number of people wishing the ERC well on its 15th anniversary on social media. So please continue the conversation there. But now we're going to take a short break, during which you'll have the opportunity to discover just 15 of the 10,000 plus grantees who've won grants from the ERC since its creation. And we'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes. Welcome back. Very happy to have you back with us this afternoon for our second session, which is going to be looking at from the European Research Council to the European Innovation Council, from pioneering research to market. And I'm very pleased to introduce the moderator of the session, Kurt Melhorn, who's Director Emeritus of the Max Planck Institute for Computer Science and co-founder of Algorithmic Solutions GmbH. He supervised some 80 PhD students and the same number of postdocs, many of whom went on to become faculty members. He's a member of the ERC Scientific Council and chairs our working group on innovation. Over to you, Kurt.
Thank you, Tony. Good afternoon. The world has changed dramatically since I was born. When I was born, there were no computers. Now, each one here carries a powerful computer. We don't call them computers anymore, we call them smartphones. When I got my PhD, my university had one mainframe, which was much less powerful than what I have in my pocket today. So it's a dramatic change. Let me give you a second example. I had to undergo heart surgery a few years ago. This type of surgery was started in the 70s, first on animals, then slowly it became into clinical practice. At the beginning, the death rate was enormous. Now it's a routine operation. In fact, the risk that something would happen to me on during the operation is less than something happens to me when I ride my bike to work. So it's very, My father, if he had had the same condition, he would have died. So the world has really changed dramatically, and much of it goes back to basic research. Now, how do I turn on the slides? Can I have the slides, please? I cannot. Okay, then let me continue. Now, okay. Okay, so we have a round table here. I will introduce my three speakers later. So there is Amanda, there is Dario, connected through video link, and there is Peter. And I want to make a short introduction. So innovation rests on basic research, but of course there is a lot more to be done to convert basic research into innovation. I work for the Max Planck Society, so I start with a quote from Max Planck. Insight must precede application. There are many ways from basic research to innovation. People is a very important one. People carry the knowledge from basic research into the companies. There is licensing, there are spin-offs, there is consulting. So there are many ways from basic research to innovation. The ERC has introduced some 10 years ago the proof of concept grant. This is a grant which appeals to grantees with an entrepreneurial spirit. Maybe 10% of our grantees have this spirit and apply for a POC. It's a small grant, 1,500K, and it helps ERC grantees bridge the gap between their research ideas and social and commercial innovation. Now, of course, 150K cannot really bridge the gap. It's the first step. And fortunately, there is now the EIC. And I think the ERC and the EIC, we have different missions. Our mission is fundamental research. The EIC's mission is innovation and economic impact. We are, in a certain sense, competitors. We compete for the love of the politicians. We compete for money. But there is also, and this is more important, there is a lot possibility for synergy. The ERC projects perform world-class research, and some of them have the potential to become world-class innovations. The EIC has the connections to industry, the connections to capital. It has grants for scaling up, support for scale-up. So it's a win-win situation. And we have started about a year or 2 years ago now, a joint group, a contact group between the EIC board and the EIC council. I'm co-chair of this group. And I would say now we have started 2 major activities. One is in our first meeting, our side sort of expressed the hope that we could create something like, we called it a super POC. 10 times the funding for 10% of the successful POCs. That's how I presented it. And the EIC said, well, I think we have the right thing, namely EIC transition. And we got off for a good start. 26 of the projects that were selected under the first call of the EIC transition are based on POCs. And we have also started joint ERC-EIC workshops that bring together scientists, startups, venture capital, industry. We had one on translational medicine this year, and we're going to have one last year, and we're going to have one on energy this year. Now I turn to the first panelist, which is Amanda Silva Brun. She's a French-Brazilian researcher. She works for CNRS at the Laboratoire for Material Science and Complex Systems here in Paris. She has 2 PhDs, one in pharmacy and biology. She has an ERC starting grant, but she has also a grant from the EIC. She got the Medal for Innovation last year of the CNRS, and she's co-founder of 2 companies. Amanda, it's your turn.
Okay, so good afternoon. Thank you, Kurt, for this introduction. I'd say that I'm really pleased to be here to talk about fundamental science and also innovation. And more particularly, I would like to talk about my goal to turn cell dust into a medicinal product for regenerative medicine. So I hope you are curious about this term cell dust. And how we are going to manage to try to convert this in therapy. So I'll tell you more. So some decades ago, researchers observed that cells were able to release particles. And they considered that these particles were waste, were cell dust. So today, now, we know that these particles, they carry biomolecules and they participate in cell communication. And they are named extracellular vesicles. So I'm really fascinated about this. This is a real part of my life, a big part of my life, these extracellular vesicles. And so this, in the future, we are convinced that these extracellular vesicles can be an alternative to cell therapy because they have an equivalent, quite similar therapeutic effect, and also they have advantages. They have advantages in terms of less immunogenicity, and also they can be safer, and in terms of logistics, it's easier to transport and also to store them. There are all these benefits, but there are also a lot of challenges. And one of these challenges is the bioproduction in terms of scalability and yield. So I got inspired by the fact that in the blood flow there was a lot of release of these vesicles, and I decided to investigate with people in the lab if a turbulent flow in bioreactors could stimulate in the same way the release of these vesicles. So what is very amazing is to observe that we observed that it was possible to produce 10 times more, 10 times faster these vesicles in a scalable way based on the physical laws of the turbulence. So this is how we set up a disruptive method to produce extracellular vesicles. And what is interesting is that it can be implemented directly in bioreactors with the certification to produce clinical batches. So the focus of my ERC project is to understand the biogenesis at the subcellular level of these vesicles produced by turbulence. So in order to show that these vesicles can be useful for therapy, we decided to tackle an unmet medical need, the therapy of digestive fistulas. So these fistulas are abnormal communication between digestive organs. And one challenge was how to administer, how to inject these vesicles to patients. And our idea was to repurpose a vessel occluder hydrogel that was already approved for clinical use as a fistula occluder. And we combined these two vesicles. So we have very promising results with interesting fistula healing, and one of the focus of my ERC is to understand the mechanism of action of this therapy. We patent both approaches, and maybe the next slides. So we joined efforts with people from business in order to go from academic research to spin-off co-founding. So this is how we co-founded Eversome with Jeanne Volatron as CEO. So Eversome is a bioproduction company dedicated to extracellular vesicle manufacturing offer. It was created in 2019, and today we have 12 employees. And thanks to the ERC Accelerator funding, Eversome is advancing to the next steps as they scale up to bioreactors of 50 liters. We are already in the 20 liters successful scale up, and the next steps the 50. So, and also the production of clinical batches. The second spin-off is Evora Biosciences, and the CEO is Adrien Lanvin. So this is a biotherapy company, and the aim is really to have the product, the medicinal product, extracellular vesicles, and to go through clinical trials. So it was created in 2020. There are 5 employees, and I hope we are going to have the ERC Accelerator too. We have already IT Health, and so this is why Evora is advancing through the clinical translation of extracellular vesicles.
Thank you, Amanda. This is very, very impressive. We turn to Dario. Oh, how do I? Oh, here he is. No, I need to go back one slide. Here, yeah, Dario Poli. He's associate professor at the University of Milano. He got an ERC consolidator grant, proof of concepts twice, and now an EIC transition. He's also co-founder of 2 companies, Nereos and Spectrophotonics, and Dario will also tell us first one slide about his research and then one slide about transfer and innovation. Dario.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here for this celebration. So a couple of words about who I am and what I do in my research life. I'm from Politecnico di Milano in Italy. And I started my research career in laser physics. Our specialty is to build special lasers who generate ultra-short laser pulses. So these laser pulses are very, very short. These are the shortest event that a human has ever created, much shorter, much faster than any computer in the world. You have to think that this laser pulse has a duration which is smaller than a millionth of a second. So it's so short compared to 1 second, as 1 second is short compared to the entire life of the world, 15 billion years of the entire universe, let's say. And we do a lot of things with these laser pulses. Mainly we observe molecules, matter, as you see here in this slide. And in particular, I recently focused on applying these laser pulses to microscopy. So you do not only have extremely high temporal resolution by focusing this light onto a sample, but you also have extremely high spatial resolution. It's like shining cells and tissues with a light bullet, because you can shrink the light into a size which is smaller than a micrometer in X, Y, and Z. So in all dimensions. So it's like a bullet which enters a biological material, as you see here in these applications, and interrogates cells and tissues for biological applications in a non-destructive way. So we listen to the sound, to the music of cells, of molecules, and by listening to this kind of sound, we can identify the molecules in a non-destructive way. And then we extract a lot of information. So we apply artificial intelligence algorithms, which are extremely important in order to extract the relevant information from the sample. And then this is my research, but then in the next slide, I talk about innovation. So regarding innovation, I co-founded 2 startup companies with other colleagues of ours who are very brilliant in this sense. I keep my position in the university, but I try to help as much as possible these 2 companies. One is called Nereos, which was founded in 2018. Now it has about 10 people working full-time. And in this company, we build these instruments that you see here on the left, which are instruments that are capable of measuring the colors of the light. And by measuring the colors of the light, you can extract relevant information from the world around us, both in the microscopy, but also in the far-field remote sensing applications, because each color tells you something about how light interacts with molecules. And so you can really understand the world around us in a much better way than our eyes can do. Our eyes only are sensitive to 3 colors of the light, let's say. Spectrophotonics is another company, again, using light to understand other properties of matter, in this case, the mechanical properties of light-matter interaction. And then I'm trying to do in my lab also continue to perform photonics innovations. And this year I even tried to set up a master thesis work on photonics innovation to continue this technology transfer from the research labs onto the companies.
Thank you, Dario. Fascinating work. And we now turn to Peter Cowley. Peter is the other side. He is entrepreneur, angel investor. He is president emeritus of the European Business Angel Network. He founded 12 startups. He invested in quite a number of startups. Some were positive, more were negative, which is to be expected. He has been on the board of many companies. He has been UK Business Angel of the Year. He has written and published.
Thank you.
Here is the advertisement, some books on the subject, and he's a speaker on the subject, and he will speak to us now. Peter, it's your turn.
Thank you very much, Kurt. But thank you more to the European Research Council for inviting me here, and happy birthday, as everybody says. I feel a bit of an imposter actually compared with everybody else. I feel I'm the sort of commercial arm rather than the research arm. I'm the dirty side of scaling businesses because I'm involved with money here rather than, I know everybody needs money to do research. So thank you very much for the introduction. I think there are three reasons why I've been invited to speak, and we'll cover these more as we go through the questions. One, I wrote an article for the ERC, which was published last month, on frontier research and the issues in scaling it. And there are four elements that came out of that. The article's online, you can read it if you wish. One is the people, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Secondly is actually scaling a business using grants is not really possible. It needs risk capital of some form. That's what I represent. Thirdly is many academics and academic institutions would like technology or ideas to be in the public domain and not necessarily protected. We as investors will only invest if there's a level of defensibility. Otherwise, we've got the chance, we put a lot of money in and it leaks out somewhere. And fourthly, university ownership. There's a big issue which is reducing gradually with the fact that a university believes it owns the rights to something that is being developed in-house and therefore will have a large proportion of the company at startup, and that leaves less room for the investors and the entrepreneurs. Just back to people, we as early stage investors invest in people. We invest in people with a plan rather than a plan with people. Slightly different for a university spin-out or a frontier research because a lot of work's been done in the background and technology has been built, as you have very well, Amanda, and Dario as well. But generally, of my 76 startups I've invested in, 60-odd don't come out of universities. They don't necessarily have what's called a minimum viable product, and therefore I'm investing in the people. So just to finish on that point, the people are the academics, clearly. And I'm speaking to Amanda, she's been allocated 20% of the time externally and 80% internally. That isn't how to build a business, just 20% of the time, one working day per week. You need people, commercial people around it, people who can raise the finance from people like me. So building a team, the EIC and others, and we'll talk later about how EBAN can help, needs to ensure there's a rounded team which can be used to build the business. I'll hand back to you, Kurt.
Thank you, Peter. Maybe I follow up directly on this. What are the expectations of business angels on projects that come out of, let's say, ERC POC or ERC generally or EIC transition?
If that project wants external funding, and in some cases it doesn't necessarily want it, but let's assume it does, it wants to scale, it's a combination of being visible to it. So business angels need to be able to see the project somehow. So this is connections between the EIC. And in fact, EBAN has worked with the EIC and its predecessor for many years. We've had something called Scale Up of the Month, where we've had things coming from the EIC, which we've looked at from business angels. So visibility is really important, whether it's done through competitions, it's done through European-wide events, it's done through some sort of deal flow software. So once they've seen the projects, then we'll look at them and decide whether they're investable. So this then comes back to the people. Now, we, as angels, we might be able to help there. We might, if we were perhaps to be involved in mentoring some of these entrepreneurs or the commercial arm of that, perhaps we can help with that. So again, connections there. Because an angel will invest in an entrepreneurial team more likely if they've known them for longer. Because in the end, what we're doing is investing, as I said earlier, in people. In order to understand whether those people are investable in, it takes time. It takes, in my case, I have a website which has got a lot of public information on it about investment criteria and failures and successes. And one of the things I say there is 5.2 months from point of contact to point of investment, of which a couple of months is the legal side. So it's a minimum of 3 months of getting to know somebody. So that's what we need the EIC and EBAN to do, is to show us the deals, let us work on those deals, and then we'll make, we're more likely to invest.
Okay, thank you. Let me turn to Dario and Amanda. So you're sort of living two lives, right? You're a researcher and you're also an entrepreneur. You have created companies. How do you bring the two lives together? Does one life hurt the other? or support the other? I mean, has it hurt your academic career to also be an entrepreneur, or has it supported your academic career? What are your ideas on this?
Maybe
you go first,
yes,
Amanda. Yeah, I see you more directly than Dario.
So, what I think is that it's really one life, as you say, may help the other, because in fact this innovation experience, it brings new challenges to research. And this is very open-minded. So it forces us to think not only about science, but thinking about other constraints, industrialization constraints, regulatory constraints, and also clinical acceptance by clinicians of our technology, in cases life science. So it forces us to think in a different way. So it's very stimulating to have different challenges and additional challenges. So this is the thing that I like the most. And I think the one stimulates the other, one life can stimulate the other. So.
Okay. So I like to say that the work for the company, it keeps me honest. Yeah, in the sense that I cannot claim that my theoretical ideas solve everything. I go out there, I try them out, and I notice,
yes,
no, there's something missing. Dario.
Yes, thank you very much. I agree with you in the sense that when you do a scientific research, you publish typically a paper with just one good result. But then if you want to build a product, it just needs to be working every day, full time, 24 hours a day, not just once, enough for publishing. So it's a totally different job to create a working product rather than just publishing a scientific research. But to come back to your question, I think, well, first of all, I had to learn how to structure my time. Time management is really important because you really live two lives. Then there is a third one at home with my kids, my family, and then so on and so forth. So you live a lot of life. And so you really need to find a way to structure everything, because if I stay one day at the company, it means that in my lab, my students will not have me present to help them. So it's really difficult, but I do it with a lot of passion. And I think it's a very wonderful endeavor to do this double life. So I suggest to people that want to do it and have a good idea to take this opportunity, but they really need to be passionate, because otherwise, I mean, you will encounter a lot of difficulties. So you do it only if you really want to.
So you now talk, both of you, you talked about sort of your conflict of interest in your personal life. Did you also encounter conflict of interest in your professional life, or that colleagues said you're exploiting the resources of the institution?
Yes.
Tony mentioned that I founded a company some 25 years ago, and when I founded it, the Secretary General of the Max Planck Society told me a Max Planck director doesn't do this. So what are your experiences with your institution?
Concerning your question, how people can react to this, I would say that maybe there are roughly, to make the long story short, 3 types of reactions. People sometimes, when they are primed to this kind of innovation, they are very supportive, and this is really nice to discuss with people that support you in this initiative. So sometimes people are curious. They are curious too, because they don't know, but they want to know more about this experience, and this is really nice too. And sometimes people are skeptical about this, because they wonder how can you manage your conflict of interest, how long you are going to work for the company and for as a research. So And I would say that in the third case, it's up to us to be proactive, to show to these people that there are rules, there is a frame, so there are things that we can do and others we can't. And the most important thing is to do something that is in the interest from the public institution you work for. So there is a frame, so we have to explain this. And once we do this work, this is going to be very interesting to spread the good word to people, I would say.
Okay, Dario?
Yes, so I agree with that. Conflict of interest is really an issue. I had this problem in my institution. Well, you might know already that in Italy, the administration is very bulky. There is a lot of bureaucracy, and you somehow feel that you have to prove that you are doing right instead of being accused if you do something wrong. So every time, for example, I buy any piece of equipment, I have to declare that I have no conflict of interest with this company or the other company. And so if the company is mine, in this case, of course, there is a lot of possible conflict of interest. And so I have to move very carefully. But I think that there are many people now in Italy that understand that the role of university is also technology transfer. There is a lot of interest in this sense. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that technology transfer is really important to show that research is not just for the sake of publishing a paper in a journal, but also to advance the knowledge and to do something which has an impact in the society. And so, bit by bit, I think that the mentality is changing. I'm from a physics department in which 99% of the people are really doing basic research, and so it's hard to communicate that we also do technology transfer, but things are changing. And so I see that, especially for the young people and the new people coming, PhD and postdocs, they really are interested, and they ask me many times how I did this, and there is a lot of interest in doing the same. So I see a bright future for this.
Okay.
Can I add something?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. So three anecdotes come to mind here, actually. One is a spin out of Cambridge University Optoelectronics department. I won't mention its name, although it is on my website as a positive exit, which raised the founding or the researcher, the professor, refused to have any shares. He didn't want to get involved. He didn't really want it to happen. Anyway, they came out of the university, had $70 million of funding over 16 years, and sold for $1.5 million. So, of course, a lot of money was lost on that journey. Of course, it didn't matter to him. He didn't have any shares at the beginning, and obviously not at the end. Another one is a Romanian professor of engineering who came to us and I invested in it, came to us for investment. And one of the criteria was, he was taking a sabbatical for a year, was that he wouldn't run the company. We wouldn't invest if this academic was going to run the company. So we put half in then, and then when he replaced himself and went back to academia with somebody else, we put the other half in. And that came to a good exit to an Austrian quoted company. So when this academic Romanian professor went on to form 2 new companies, and there may well have been, and almost certainly there's some European funding in this, he knew not to be the founder, or rather the CEO, so he brought somebody in both cases and has gone on successfully. So things have changed, is what I'm saying. And I think you've both said that. Attitudes are changing. And one final point is, which I'm sure you're all aware, that being an entrepreneur is becoming a career choice now for academics. You know, so I mean, people coming through university possibly just post their first degree or postdoc. So going into entrepreneurship, something that when I was growing up, and we're the same sort of age, as you said earlier on, you know, my university only had one computer, which was my watch is much more powerful. It was just not an option.
So, Peter, let me ask one more question, or follow up. So, Dario said that he now offers, let me call it, entrepreneurial master thesis. So, students, he involves them in transferring knowledge to creating innovation. What would be a role of a business angel in a program like this? Or can a business angel help here? Or
I do. I mean, I'm part of the Judge Management Institute in Cambridge, and I lecture there, not as an academic role. There are plenty of academics to do that, as a practitioner role. So this is helping people. These are people in the management school, but there are a lot of people who've come out of technology, have come in to do an MBA of some form, who want an entrepreneurial MBA, or not an exec MBA, but an entrepreneurial MBA, who want the sort of advice and mentoring, and whether it's delivered in lecture form, whether it's delivered in book form, whether it's delivered in mentoring form, to lead them through from their background into some sort of business that they can. So yes, we can do that, and not just me.
Any advice for Dario?
No, I think he's doing a great job, I suspect. I obviously haven't looked at what course he's running, but talk to your Italian angels,
Dario, you're muted.
Are you back?
I'm not muted, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Before I only saw your mouse moving.
Okay, sorry. So I was saying, in case of success, if the master's thesis students will manage to build a successful story, then I will come back to you, maybe.
Okay. Tony, do you have any questions in the chat?
Yes, we do have at least a couple of questions, actually. The first one is asking what can be done to increase the participation of researchers in the EIC Accelerator Programme?
Ooh. I'm the wrong person. I'm afraid I'm the wrong person to ask.
Maybe I can try.
Yeah, I'm up.
Because in fact we got an ERC accelerator. I would say that in our case, at least, what helped us is to do fundamental research, but to ground on consolidated bricks. I'll explain more. And we have done to investigate the effect of turbulence flow in extracellular vesicle emission disease fundamental research. But we have done this in bioreactors that are certified for the production of clinical batches. So this way, we are eliminating risks in the next steps. And in the second approach, for instance, we repurposed a hydrogel that was already approved for clinical use, and we use it for fistula occlusion. So this also reduces risks, as it was already approved for clinical use. So we can do. I think one possibility is to do we can do fundamental research, but ground on consolidated bricks. This is one possibility, at least the one I think. And just if I have one more minute, I would say that when we understand the constraints of industrialization, when we understand the constraints of regulatories and clinicians, at least we get prepared or primed to think about this and integrate a solution, even if we don't have immediately a solution for these constraints. But we can think about it and get ready if we see the missing piece of the puzzle in front of us to identify it. And this, I think, can accelerate things.
Thank you. Tony, I guess a last question. We can do one more question?
We actually have 10 minutes left, so we're pretty comfortable time-wise. But there is indeed a second question, and you may have other questions for the panel members. But there's a question from Cavalli Lab, basically drawing the distinction between funding available at the European level and funding available at the national level. And basically the lion's share of the funding is available at the national level. And how can we redress that balance and try to boost the funding available at European level for innovation?
Is this grant funding or equity funding?
It's not clear from the question. But.
Okay, it's difficult. I can't answer in terms of grants, but I can answer in terms of angel investing. So as I said earlier on, angels invest in people. Now COVID has changed some of this, of course, but in order to get to know the people, locality, being in the same space, being close, was really important. Now, less so because we've had 2 years now of investing, which didn't reduce that much, but we don't get to know the people so well. But this does mean that cross-border investing, something that IBAN has been working on for a long time, is difficult. And one example, for instance, is the Med Angels, which is the Mediterranean Angels, where the capital is north of the Med, obviously, and there's plenty of entrepreneurs in the south. So this is getting the capital to move south across into North Africa and around into the Middle East. And the way that's doing is by getting an angel to know an angel in another country and investing through that angel. So the trust that's needed in order, if you were the entrepreneur, which you obviously are, if I was investing in your business, I need to trust you because I'm going to give you a load of money, or I'm going to give Amanda a load of money. I want you to go off and grow that. So if you can't get to know the angel, then you could get to know, sorry, the entrepreneur, get to know an angel who's got to know the entrepreneur, and therefore the money will flow across border. It's not as easy because it's not the same. So coming back to the national and international, it's easier for an angel to, this is an active angel, this isn't a crowdfunding investor or it's a small VC, to get to know if this physical proximity. I have a rule on my website that says I won't invest in any entrepreneur that's more than 90 minutes by public transport from my home. Seems unfair really, but it's sort of the Silicon Valley mentality to some extent. And this is because of getting to know people. So to come back to the question, yes, investing equity locally within national is the way it's always worked. COVID might have changed that.
Thank you. So a question to all three of you. I didn't tell you in advance that I would ask you to do this. Do you have any, Peter, do you have any question for Amanda or Dario? Amanda, any questions to Dario or Peter? Dario, any questions to Amanda or Peter?
Who's going to start?
Yes, when we were waiting, I asked, but this is something that you already commented on. The main criteria for you when choosing to invest in one startup and not another, because, and I thought this is an interested question because we're looking for, and just to understand how do you consider this? So we already told this in the beginning, but maybe if you want to discuss more about that, you told, anyway, you told me this is people, right? The most important criteria for you. And I think this is a really important point because even if the project, sometimes there are some problems, people can adjust the project, but if people are not good enough, they are going to continue with the wrong project. And so this is an important thing that I understood from you.
Yes, so just to expand on that, because of course you're the technical founder, you're the academic founder. If I was going to invest in your business, I'd want to see the entrepreneurial team. And one of my rules is, which I stick to pretty closely, and many angels do, is that the team is not just one person. Now, it couldn't be in your case because you're an academic and you've got only 20% of your time. We want the CEO to be doing at least 100%. I mean, it's unfair to do more than 100%, but many do, and you would say you work a lot of hours. So it's getting the team and the team dynamics. So it's seeing, working out whether those people are going to stick together. And of my 70-odd investments in 150 founders, 30 founders or so have left. And a founder leaving a business is really hard, emotionally and fiscally, et cetera, et cetera. So whether they're going to work together well. So it's getting to know the team. And providing that team looks like it's going to get there, is good listeners, is coachable, it's going to move on as things change. I mean, your market you're looking at now and the market in 5 years' time might be completely different, as you're aware. Then that's what I'd need to see.
Thank you.
Dario, any question to either Amanda or Peter?
I have a question for Peter. I believe that from an academia point of view, typically as professors and researchers, we often develop a technology rather than a solution to a problem. Then sometimes, as in my case, it happened, for example, we come out with a very innovative technology with great potential that was born not because of a push from trying to solve a problem, but because we really developed a new technology. Then we look for a problem to be solved with this technology, which is somehow totally different from probably, I had no chance to read your book, Peter, but I imagine that typically the business school tells you, find a problem and then look for a solution to the problem. What if you find a good solution and then you look for a problem? Would you invest in such a startup company with a great potential, but not yet a clear market to be addressed, but many potential markets?
Yes, yes,
that's typical for high-tech companies, I think. No.
I would, and I have. And again, back to one of the anecdotes I've just given, which is called Cambridge CMOS sensors that sold to Austria Microsystems. And this was the Romanian professor I was talking about earlier on. When I invested, it was a hot plate company. So CMOS is a type of semiconductor technology, and it was producing hot plates. So all it was doing was something that heated something up. It sold as a gas detection company, so detecting CO2, using the same technology, using a hot plate and then coating one of the hot plates with a metal oxide coating, which was absorbed, say, CO2 molecules and changed its frequency, the resonance. So yeah, I definitely have done that. I've invested in a business that was going one direction. Now, they had identified something there they thought would be a market, although the market would have been much smaller. But yes, in terms of university spin-outs, obviously, one has to have a huge leap of faith because it is, as you've said, Dario, the wrong way round. You should be solving a pain point, which is obviously 60 or so of my investments are doing that, but they haven't got as far. So totally agree. I will invest in something that I believe fundamentally is defensible technology and has got the right people around it on the basis with enough capital that will find a market. Now, if it doesn't in some cases, like the one I mentioned with $80 million that went in, it'll fail. But then many of them fail anyway. This is super risk capital at this point. You're wanting not just your money back, you're wanting your money back times a multiple, and it's a portfolio approach. Does that answer your question, Dario?
Thank you very much. Yes, that answers, yes.
Okay, so Dario, you can keep on looking for inventing a new hammer and then come to Peter for the problem. No.
For the money. For the problem. No, you can find the problem as well.
So I thank you all. I thank the three panelists. I thought this was lively and I learned something. And I wish you all the best.
And buy the book.
And buy the book. Buy the book. Buy Peter's book. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kurt, and thanks again to all of the speakers in that session on innovation. Our next session will put the spotlight on social sciences and humanities. Before handing over to the moderator and the panelists, let's discover an ERC project from just around the corner here in Paris, from the social sciences and humanities domain, led by the French researcher Charlotte Ribeyrolles, who is Associate Professor in 19th century British literature at the Sorbonne University in Paris. And she has an ERC consolidator grant for her project Chromotope. So let's just catch a sight of the kind of research she's doing before we move on to our next panel session on social sciences and humanities. Welcome back to our third session, which is on humanities and social sciences for the future of Europe. And I'm delighted to introduce Eveline Kroon, who is full professor in developmental neuroscience in society, and she leads the Society, Youth and Neuroscience Connected Lab. She joined the ERC Scientific Council in 2017, and since 2020, she's been one of our 3 vice presidents. Over to you, Eveline.
Thank you, Tony. I'm delighted to be part of this event here today to celebrate 15 years of ERC. It's just a shame that we cannot be all together here in person on this wonderful occasion, but fortunately we can reach many of you through the live stream. So for those of you who do not know me, I'm a professor in psychology, developmental neuroscience in society specifically, and I'm from the Netherlands. As Tony mentioned, since 2017, I have had the honor to serve as a member of the Scientific Council of the European Research Council, and since 2020 as one of its 3 vice presidents. So The European Research Council was first set up in 2007. We're celebrating today the 15 years of its success, and its aim is to provide flexible, long-term funding for high-potential individual researchers. ERC grantees can be of any nationality and work in any field, including the social sciences and humanities. The aim is to give ERC grantees the freedom to develop ambitious projects of their own choosing. So, at the ERC, we fully recognize the value of the social sciences and humanities and the need to support them on an equal basis with the physical and the life sciences. But in these days, when funders insist that every research proposal must demonstrate impact or relevance, when politicians and policymakers want to solve grand challenges and missions, then sometimes we have to work a little bit harder to explain the value of social sciences and humanities. I do not doubt that new and improved technologies can make major contributions to addressing some of the many challenges that we face. But we also desperately need new ideas about how to live sustainably, how to confront inequality, and how we might live and educate ourselves in the future. We need to appreciate the wisdom of other societies and cultures, and those who have previously been marginalized. We need to learn the lessons of the past as well as the present. And that's why I'm very impressed by the work of our 3 panel members here today. And I'm so pleased to introduce right next to me Professor Elisabetta Crocetti from the University of Bologna in Italy. And on my left, Professor François Desroches from the Collège de France. And remotely, hopefully, Professor Philippe Matejka from the Economics Institute of the Czech Academy of Sciences. Good to see you on the screen. Thank you. Before we move to our discussion, I would like to ask our 3 panel members to give you a short overview of their very exciting work. So please enjoy. I will start with inviting Professor François Desroches to present us some of his exciting work and recent findings.
Thank you so much. The CICLE project I've been leading investigated the cultural and intellectual life of Morocco in the 16th and 17th centuries, at a time when Morocco was starting to feel itself like a nation. Under the dynasty then reigning, the Saadians, the country experienced a moment of quiet and wealth because they were exporting sugar to Europe, and this was bringing a lot of money. On the other hand, politically, Morocco was between Spain and the Ottoman Empire and was playing carefully to remain independent and trying to not to be eaten by one of its powerful neighbors. But our point of entry into the topic were the books. We wanted to understand the intellectual history, knowing what books were read by Moroccan. And we have the luck to have almost entire Moroccan library of the time, the library of a sultan, in the Escorial, close to Madrid, because it was taken on a boat, a French boat, carrying the books from Safi, near Marrakesh, to Agadir, because the sultan had some problems locally and fled hurriedly with his books, because he was also an intellectual and wanted to have his books with him. And so they were taken to Madrid, and we can study, and it's very interesting because the books are speaking, so to say, speaking through the materiality, because the paper used, the bindings, the scripts tell us something about the way in which they were made and used. And then, of course, the contents are very important, because they give us a very good idea about what they felt. And sometimes we found very strange and innovative ideas. For example, Ahmad al-Mansur was the brightest sultan of the dynasty, was very careful to keep the Ottoman away from Morocco, but at the same time he was a great lover of Ottoman culture. And well, this was not known until now, and we discovered that he had his books alla turca, or he wanted to have even Ottoman craftsmen in Marrakesh to produce book in the Ottoman style. So it's a way of exchanging styles and ideas which we never thought when starting this project. Intellectually, Morocco was a little bit in a kind of dependence from the East. Books were bought in lots from Cairo, for example, and we have now discovered a lot of information about the prices of the book. We didn't know how a book was worth at that time, but now we have plenty of information about this, and we know how much the sultans paid for bringing these books to their place. One interesting thing is also the encyclopedic aim of these sultans. They wanted to have, like Pic de la Mirandole, the Omnire Scibili, a library covering every aspect of knowledge, which contrasts with the idea we had that this kind of general libraries died a long time ago in the East and were no longer of actuality in Morocco at that time. But no, we think that it was probably because the Sa'idin were claiming for the caliphate. They said they were descending from Muhammad and they wanted to be head of the Muslim world. And so it was a way of having in their library the entire Islamic world at between their hands. And it's also a very interesting period because we are just between the fall of Granada, 1492, and the expulsion in 1610 of the last Muslim communities of Spain. Because, of course, after Granada fall, Muslims remained in Spain, and they were expelled at the beginning of the 17th century, 2 years before the capture of the boat. And we could think that Spain, Muslim Spain, was completely lost, but it's not the case. Actually, the Moroccan cared a lot about this marvelous country which was definitively lost, and they dreamt of having it again, and there was kind of let's say fascination for this culture of and history of Islamic Spain, which was preserved in Marrakesh. And one of also the very interesting things we found was that there were so close to Europe, but so far there was no dictionary of Spanish, Italian, for example, and we know they were having a trade with Spain, with France, with Italy, but well, they were not interested in or the history of these countries. They had, for example, a lot of histories about Muslim Spain, but nothing about Christian Spain. So it was at the same time an interest for the globality of science, but a Muslim science, not a global universe. One of the fascinating things we found in these books are the notes by the sultans. They were reading with a pen in a hand, and we have something which was quite unexpected, opinion about the books. Well, this book is rubbish. Oh, yes, well, this is a nice piece of science. And we have, for example, one of the sultans saying, oh, well, I was stolen because there was some unrest. They stole me these books, but the bastard paid, and so on. It was really sometimes very, very harsh. And in a civilization which has almost no archives, it's very funny to see that this information we would never have come to us through the books which are in the Escorial. Last but not least, the Escorial collection, what at the moment in the 17th and early 18th centuries, one of the largest collections of Arabic books in Europe. Well, in a Vatican library was also very rich, but for example in France there were a few manuscripts, not so much. And a catalogue of this manuscript was published by the mid-70s, and it was a gate into Muslim literature and Muslim culture for European scientists, and they started for the Escorial. And so we found a lot of things which were quite unexpected when we started, and we will now publish a book which will help sharing our finds with a larger audience. And to end, I will say that it was really a pleasure to work with a team which was made by members of the countries involved. We had a Spanish colleague, a Moroccan colleague, and myself, so we were once again united as in the beginning of the 17th century. Thank you.
Oh, that is so wonderful to hear. It's fascinating findings, and your passion speaks for it as well. I could listen to it for hours, and I am very happy to hear that there will be a book here in the studio. People are also already nodding that they are so fascinating by this great research. Well, we're very lucky because we have another very passionate scientist here in the studio. Her name is, as I already introduced, Professor Elisabetta Crocetti from the University of Bologna, and would please ask you to also share with us your passion for science and your possibly recent findings.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here today. There is also a nice coincidence because the ERC turns 15, and 15 is the mean age of my participants. Because yes, my project is about young people, and it's a project about one of the most fascinating questions that all human beings have: who am I? Which is my identity? So in my project, we try to understand how young people develop their own identity. And we start from the awareness that growing up in modern multicultural societies can be challenging for young people. Young people with a migrant background, like first generation, second generation immigrants, refugees, but also young people without such a migrant background have a variety of experience. They are exposed to different values, to different cultural systems, and they need to find out their own way, their own identity. So in my project, we want to understand how the multiple experiences that young people have in their daily life, they influence their identity over time, and how this lately influence their well-being. So we adopt a multidimensional perspective. So we look at the experiences of young people across different contexts, from the very close one, so their family, their peers, their school, their leisure context, to the more distal one, such as being exposed to certain mass media communication about youth, about migration, to cultural values. And then we look at identity also multidimensionally in terms of personal choices, but also social membership in meaningful groups, and identification with the more subordinate human group to which all of us belong. And finally, we look at well-being also multidimensionally, starting from physical health with both objective and subjective parameters, psychological well-being, and social integration. So following a very large sample of young people over time, together with their parents, with their teachers, with their school principal, interviewing municipal administrator, we really want to understand how this variety of experience can be a resource for young people to develop their own identity, and how this lately can impact their well-being and their capacity to be well and to adapt proactively in the society. So this is the goal, and of course this is highly relevant for Europe, but not only, because it speaks about social inclusion, and as we will discuss later.
Fantastic. I'm so impressed by the broadness of your approach, all speaking to this one question: how can we have these young people grow up successfully? And I think in a world that is confused at this time, it is more important than ever. So thank you for sharing your inspiring story and taking us on your recent findings, sharing with us why they are so important. We're very lucky because we have a third speaker, Professor Filip Matejka from the Czech Academy of Sciences. I give you the floor to also share with us your recent findings and the beauty of your research field.
Yeah, hi Evelyn, everyone. So thanks a lot. And so first, I want to add that I'm also very happy to be here. I think ERC is actually, wonderful, wonderful program. Probably hasn't it been for ERC, I would not be doing research in the Czech Republic still. So this is, that's crucial and very important. And, even more so, I have to stress, especially in these extremely difficult times, that I'm, extremely happy and, even I would say strongly surprised how much Europe is pulling together. How the response to Putin's aggression has been strong and swift, and I think this is great, and I'm very, very thankful for that. So now to research. I'm an economist. I study, you would call it, information economics. So in economics, I would say 1/3 or 1/4 of Nobel Prizes have been given for interaction of information and markets, what implications it has for how markets work, how people consume, and so on. If you don't know about the product, you never buy it. If you think you're healthy, but insurance company doesn't think so, the market works very different, and so on. But for 40 years, the discussion has always been about who has the information, who doesn't have the information, or what information is available and what information is not available. Especially in last, let's say, 15 years, because of the rise of internet, there is much more information available than what we can digest as limited human beings. So my research is about implications of our limited attention for how the economy works. And with my colleagues in Prague, as well as around the world, we worked on several different topics. For instance, implications for dynamics of macroeconomy. If a central bank changes interest rate, maybe bankers know about it right away, but my grandma in the Czech Republic doesn't know. She doesn't read about it, she doesn't respond to it, and maybe it hurts her. So now we have new models, dynamic models that central banks use that are based on inattention. We studied effects of inattention on discrimination. It was often said that so-called statistical discrimination can just be solved by giving more information about individuals. Now, imagine if you get a 100-page resume of a minority applicant. Well, you just don't read it. So we described a mechanism and verified experimentally that attention is extremely important in the way how discrimination is formed. Another project that we worked on was interaction of inattention and politics. A lot of politics is about manipulating and driving attention, what is paid attention to, what politicians, what topics, and so on. And recently we're working on similar things. We are working on implications of inattention for understanding the world, what narratives we talk about. And finally, and that's something I'm very excited about, we're studying inattention of doctors. So that means there is a lot of information coming out of IT systems on doctors about tests of patients, about their current state. But doctors, just like we, social sciences, they're normal human beings, maybe wonderful ones, but it's difficult to read all the data in an instance. So they tend to block a lot of the information. So we're trying to understand these limits a bit more, and maybe then hopefully we'll help doctors care about our health even better. So thanks again to all of Europe, not only for supporting me, but for supporting even much more important causes these days.
Thank you, Filip, for sharing what the ERC has meant for you personally, but also why it is so important in these current very complicated times, which the feeling that we all share here, and also for telling us about your very exciting research that has an impact at so many levels. So really wonderful to hear these examples. So you can understand how lucky I feel to be Vice President for the Social Sciences and Humanities, and I get to experience all these fantastic research projects on a daily basis. And as you have seen, it's also the problems that are addressed by social sciences and humanities are very broad. And this is also what I would like to discuss today with my panel members. And maybe, François, I can start with you. My question would be, how do you think that social sciences and humanities ERC projects contribute to build a European society open and inclusive?
Well, I think they do exactly the job which I witnessed when I was a child, when Europe was started, well, learning about each other. After all, France and Germany overcome a long history of conflicts and started to speak normally. I was born in the eastern part of France. Part of my family was German-speaking, actually, but they felt very French. And so I think that I came to humanities by this kind of example of how you can progress, sharing with people who have not exactly the same culture as you do, and broadening, of course, my view to a larger world than just this micro part of France.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Wonderful example. And Elisabeth, in your work, you address also this question directly. Would you like to share with us some of your experiences?
Yes, to understand how we can promote social inclusion, especially starting from young people, is a core goal in my project. And the starting point is a question I always had. I mean, if I look at my experience, as was also mentioned before, for me, like Europe, to have a European identity means to think about my former Dutch colleagues, my German collaborator, or the people from Lithuania or from Romania I work together. So Europe is a Europe of faith, of relationship, of friendship. And all these help me to understand better who am I. Mm-hmm. So my basic question is how ethnic and cultural diversity can be a resource, also for young people to understand themselves, and when in contrast it becomes a threat, and then it leads to what unfortunately we see, prejudice, discrimination, even war. So this is the basic question that we also try to understand in the project, under which condition experiencing diversity in our societies can be a resource for young people developing themselves, and when in contrast it becomes a threat.
Yeah, wonderful. Philippe, would you also like to share with us your thoughts on how you think ERC projects can contribute to build an open and inclusive European society? I don't know if I'm connected to Philippe.
So, to me, ERC is actually all about freedom. For me, it was great, to get a grant that I can pursue ideas in the long run that I believe are important and often risky. You try something, it doesn't work out for a year, then you pursue something slightly different. I think that this is extremely important. So ERC comes with freedom, and what, I'm probably not saying anything deep now, but and I'm sure I know I'm not, but so somehow what really matters are the ideas. Anyone can apply. It's a wonderful idea, and the freedom that you're not checked every year whether you performed or not, because in research what matters is risk, and that whether if 1 out of 4 extremely risky ideas works out, that's progress. Not when we have 100 things that all of them work out, but we knew before we began what would happen with those ideas. And so I think this is important.
Yeah, wonderful, Philippe. I think what you also referred to is the bottom-up insights that we can get from the ERC. So maybe, Elisabeth, you would also like to share with us what have bottom-up insights from ERC taught us about how to approach the world and its complexity, and specifically for our field of science. Do you have examples based on your own research or other research where these bottom-up insights have been really helpful?
Yes, what I think is wonderful about the ERC is that it gives possibility to scientists to think in big, to look at reality and try to understand reality in its complexity. So differently from other funding schemes, you don't need to narrow your research question to fit in a specific discipline. You can really look at connection, at making bridges between disciplines, and trying to understand what each discipline can bring to understand a specific topic. And like in my personal experience, for instance, what happened to me was that I submitted my proposal just 2 weeks before the starting of the pandemic. And then when my project was founded and could start, the world was completely different. And then I think the ERC is really the founding scheme that gives you the possibility to say, okay, reality comes first, and then I will adapt my project. So I expanded my project, I introduced new goal to understand how people, young people growing up in this current situation with this completely different condition they develop, and how this can influence their identity and their well-being in the short term, but also in the long term, because we try to follow them over time and to understand which are the real implications of being a student during the pandemic, of doing online teaching instead of in presence, of experiencing all this restriction. And so what I learned from the ERC is that you can think in big and you can really look at reality in all its complexity.
Yeah, and you've published some very important papers even on these experiences in the pandemic, which I've seen in the past, so that's wonderful to see. How does that work for you, François, coming more from the humanities background? Could you share with us how bottom-up insights have helped you to approach the world in its complexity?
Yes, well, it's actually when you start, well, think that libraries are usually seen through isolated books. Before us, people came to the Escorial or the libraries and took a book and read it. We took all the books and we didn't read each of them, but we collected the material. And this in this ERC was wonderful because in the end, the product was different from what we were thinking, but it helped us to introduce new ideas, modify the goal, and get in the end something which was really, as I think I tried to explain, which was really fascinating, because it was really a new world which was open. And in this case, I think the funding of ERC was crucial for having the broad perspective we needed to do that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So maybe I can stay with you for my next question. We live in very complicated times. Can you share with us how you feel that social sciences and humanities projects can possibly contribute to also European policy?
Well, it's for us it started in a very easy way because we were people from various nationalities, but I think it's now the case of so many ERC projects, and in this way where we learn, because it's not only the persons but also different way of looking at things, and you have to listen to what the other people have to say. My Spanish colleagues or my Moroccan colleagues told me things which I didn't expect, because they approached the reality in a different way. So I think it's a continual process of learning with people, which is open when you start a project. And I hope that in the end the product is precisely to give the keys to other dimensions, because we provide answers, answers, but these answers, well, it's not like the good tool and then you think of the problem, but we give the keys and people will be able to open doors and find, well, new ways of making research, new topics.
Yeah, and combine all these different perspectives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Philippe, I think your research speaks to this directly. Can you share with us how you feel like your project or other projects can contribute also to European policy?
I think it does, and often it does by that we can out loud say that we don't know. So I think we researchers in the Czech Republic, for instance, and I saw it all around Europe and all around the world, in the last 2 years, the Czech Republic, for instance, during COVID times, that I think we were quite useful and we were more visible than before. Especially economics is like football. And what I mean by that is that everyone has an opinion how it should be done. And then suddenly, us researchers that, we get some awards around the world, but typically we are not visible at all in the media in the Czech Republic. And suddenly we popped out and we wanted to help. They called us professors. And then interview came and we said, we don't know. And the reason that we don't know is that nobody knows because there is no proof. And so suddenly we were able to discipline the discussion a bit more, that these are the things that we know, these are the things that we don't know. And you guys, if you do know, that's not true because nobody knows. And then we should be much more careful in that part of the policy. So I think that was very useful. Specifically, then my research with inattention is actually a lot about what we know, what we don't know about the risk. We talked a lot about how policy has to be simple. If it's not simple, it increases uncertainty, it doesn't work, then in the end, governments and citizens are not aligned, or businessmen and governments. And so we thought that this was quite useful. But even just the first thing, saying, not being afraid to say we don't know, we found super useful, and I think it helped.
Thank you, Philippe. I think this nicely fits also with some conclusions from the previous session on innovation, where we have to be clear on where we feel that we can provide answers and where we have to do more research. Would you like to share also your thoughts, Elisabetta, on this specific question?
Yes, we really try to understand what is working to promote social integration in young people. So, for instance, we interview municipal administrators about what has been done in each area, and over time we will see what works better and what does not work. And with this information we can then give this back to the society and prove that some practices maybe were well thought, but in practice they did not work as expected, and some other initiative, some other program can be more effective to promote the social integration of young people. So all this scientific knowledge can then be transferred back to society and inform evidence-based policies. And also something that I would like to add that I think is very important is that we really try to involve our participants in sharing the results with them. Like last week with my team, we went to a school that participated in the pilot, and we explained to students, this is what we discovered from your data, from the data of your parents, of your school, and so on. And this was so rewarding to see the impact that can also be made on the life of young people by being part of the research program.
I fully agree. We have to always involve the public, the people around us, the people we work with on what research is and what our findings are. So that's wonderful to hear. We invite people also to come with questions in the chat. I don't know if questions already came in.
So we have a few questions coming in from our online audience, Evelyn. Perhaps the first one is about ERC grants. Social sciences and humanities users don't apply enough, according to this viewer of our event today. I don't know if that applies to France particularly or Europe-wide. What could we do to convince researchers from the social sciences domain to apply more?
Yeah, so it does indeed differ between countries. So in some countries the application rate is higher than for others. We have here also grantees at the table, so they can can possibly share their experiences. But let me also share with you a personal experience as being a member of the Scientific Council. So we visit many countries, and of course we always hope that the budget can be higher, because the biggest regret that we feel is that we cannot fund all the projects. But still, I often speak to people who say, even though I did not get funded, it was the most gratifying experience, because you get to think broad, you get to think about this big project, what you would like to do with a generous amount of funding over a 5-year period of time. And just that exercise is already extremely rewarding. I probably will get some responses where people say, well, it's a lot of work if it doesn't get funded. But what's also the nice thing about the ERC is that you can keep trying. So if you don't get funded the first round, that's absolutely normal. That happens a lot. And then you can apply again and again, and as long as you want. But just that exercise of thinking broad and big about your most exciting dream project can be very, very gratifying. François, do you agree with me? Has this also been a gratifying experience for you?
I would say try again. It's the rule of the game. You have to first to write something which is worth, and of course you correct because you discover that you missed perhaps a point. And one of the things I appreciated most in the process was that there was a feedback. I mean, you were not receiving a letter, sorry, we don't have money for you, but you also received opinions of the reviewers saying, well, we thought this and that. Of course, you disagree if it's not in your favor. No, but well, it gives you the opportunity to make something better, and it works.
Thank you for mentioning this, because we're also very grateful to the fantastic panel members, which are high-level scientists across Europe who invest this time to really go through all the proposals and provide individual feedback. Do you agree with me, or how have you experienced it?
Yes, what really I appreciated about the process is it's really a fair process. I mean, you apply, it can be successful, not successful, but also perceive this fairness in the process and really the opportunity to learn out of it. And in case it's successful, I think this is the only program that really provides you with the opportunity to form your team, to really start something new, to create something. And of course, if there is passion, as we have seen today in all the presentation, this is the right place to be.
Philippe, we also find it extremely important to make sure that countries who have been traditionally less successful in the ERC get opportunities to apply and be successful. Would you like to share some of your experiences in the process?
Yes, thanks a lot. I want to highlight first that I really liked your answer, that, it's gratifying. So for me, so I got the ERC twice. I was lucky enough to get it twice. So the first time I really stopped for 3 months doing research and just thought about what is it that I want to spend my next 5 years with. And I think this is very important, just to stop, read a lot, that otherwise, we're in the everyday mechanics, we don't do this enough. So I think this is important. And then how to make people apply more. What we're trying to do now in the Czech Republic, and it's not successful yet, is more like align the local schemes with the ERC. So what's wonderful about the ERC, or one of the many things, is the high risk, high gain. I think. Especially in research should not be that democratic. When something is not wonderful in research, the gain is much smaller. On the other hand, on our local level, we are providing grants basically for quantity, but not for quality. You can imagine that when there is this mismatch, then people are not willing to think that much about high risk, high gain project if the probability of not getting is high, when they cannot use the same project on the local level. So I think it is very important that these things are aligned. So you try for ERC, if it works, wonderful. If it doesn't work, it's a great project, and then you can use all these ideas somewhere else. And of course, then there are some other ways how to increase the number of applicants that are perhaps not optimal, and I'm not gonna talk about those.
Let's hope that a lot of the policymakers in the different countries are listening and realize that you need to have a good support at your home base to apply also for other grants. So that's an important take-home message. I see we have 1 minute left, so if you have a very short question, we can still take it.
Okay, well, there were a number, but perhaps one which is topical is one of our online viewers asked how the pandemic has affected social sciences and humanities research specifically, and what influence it's like to have on the future development of the domain. Perhaps a couple of words from each of the panelists, and then we could wrap up.
It's going to be tricky in half a minute, but I'll give you the floor in 1 sec. I think that all the research domains have suffered from the pandemic. So this is not only for social sciences and humanities, but also other domains. And the ERC has tried to be very flexible with giving prolongation on the grants to make sure that people can still do their research. Would you like to share with us?
We were just at the last phase. We couldn't travel to Morocco, Spain also, so we couldn't finish a part of the project. We spoke with ERC, we got the authorization to slightly adjust to what was possible and to have an extension to finish another book instead of the book we had initially foreseen. But it was really a very wonderful adaptation to what was really happening.
I'm so glad to hear that that worked out for you, at least in this way. So with that, I would like to thank the panel members, Philippe, Elisabetta and François, for your time and sharing your stories. And thanks, Tony, for helping me with organizing this session. And I give the floor back to you.
Thanks very much, Eveline, and thanks also from me to the 3 speakers in that session. It was really fascinating listening to you. And in fact, thanks to all of our speakers today and all of the moderators who guided us through the discussions. Thanks to our online audience for joining us, for all of your reactions on social media, the birthday wishes and the other comments, and the questions you've submitted today via the YouTube chat. We're moving now towards the closing of today's event, but please do stay with us because we still have 2 very important interventions before we conclude. We'll be hearing again from Maria Leptin, the President of the European Research Council, and Clément Beaune, the French State Secretary for European Affairs, will be joining us for the closing of the event. So please stay with us and we'll be back with you in just a few moments. So welcome back, and I'm very pleased to be joined here in the studio again by Maria Leptin, our President of the European Research Council. And I'm just being told that Clément Beaune is arriving in the building, so we're very much looking forward to welcoming him very soon on the stage. But before we hear from Clément Beaune, Maria, may I turn to you? You've heard some of the fantastic speeches and testimonials from our speakers at this afternoon's event. What would you like to share with us? What are your reflections, having heard all of these remarks about the ERC's 15th anniversary and looking ahead to your term as President of the organization?
Well, very positive, of course, but I think I should, again, start with thanks. So first of all, our hosts who arranged this here for us, Antoine Petit and Thomas Römer, Antoine Petit of the CNRS and his colleagues, and Thomas Römer of the Collège de France. Thank you for having had us here and for still being with us. And also, once again, to Frédérique Vidal for her really inspiring message this morning. That is such a pleasure to see politicians recognize the full breadth and meaning of the kind of work that the ERC does. Also, it was good to have the G6 group of research organizations here, have them participate actively. So I want to thank all of you, those who were here in person, and you have all interacted with the ERC very productively and constructively in the past, and I hope we can continue that cooperation. France, of course, is a great beneficiary of the ERC grants. It's had over 1,300 grants here. More than 600 of them are hosted at the CNRS, so it's really host to thousands of talented researchers, and a lot of the frontier pushing is being done right here in this country. So about today, it was, of course, inspiring and really to see the whole breadth. I should apologize right away to the session on the EIC that I've missed, but I can assure you that I was at the same time being interviewed for the French press and made exactly the point of the fruitful and productive interaction between the ERC and the EIC. I was asked with some suspicion in the voice of the interviewer how I felt about that, and I could reassure them that we have a working group that does this, and that personally the current interim former president of the EIC and I are on best terms. So I think together we're doing exactly what Uğur ŞAHIN said this morning. It's not one or the other. It's both together, and I'm really glad that that is happening at the highest level of funding. I did hear the session on the importance on the humanities just now, and of course, from what I've always said is I'm particularly pleased about that, to have had this discussion. In fact, I recently spoke to Vice President of the European Commission, Vera Jourova, a fairly wide-ranging conversation, and she remarked that it was very frustrating. She has a good understanding of basic science, so it was good fun discussion, but she remarked that during the migrant crisis, she found it very difficult and frustrating that so many claims were being made about immigration and about integrating or not integrating migrants, undermining culture, all these things that were being said. She had, I have no data on which to judge this. She should have been here today, and I really want to thank the panel here. She should have been listening to you, and it's very good to see that this is being worked on. We need people who try and understand the minds of people, the identities of migrants or non-migrants, shared cultures, whether it's Quran versus the Bible. Religion is important. And of course, anybody who helps a grandmother in the Czech Republic trying to understand the intricacies of the financial markets, that contributes to society in a big way. It's not just the vaccines. And similarly, the discussions of this afternoon in the EIC panel went in the same direction. So I think what we've seen is the value not only of applied science, but of basic science across the whole range of research contributing to society. And I think that is the best advertisement and the best birthday present that the ERC could wish for.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maria, for those closing remarks. And we're very honoured to welcome to our event today Clément Beaune, the Secretary of State for European Affairs in the French government. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy agenda to attend this event to mark the 15th anniversary of the ERC, organised together with our friends from the CNRS and the Collège de France. It's great to have you with us, and I turn to you now for the closing remarks at our conference.
Merci beaucoup de votre invitation, Monsieur le Président du CNRS, Monsieur l'administrateur, Madame la Présidente du Conseil européen de la recherche, Mesdames et Messieurs, quelques visages familiers pour ceux qui ont la chance d'être physiquement avec nous et ceux qui nous regardent. Je suis très heureux d'abord que vous puissiez, malgré les circonstances sanitaires et les contraintes qui demeurent, le format qui a dû être adapté, maintenir cet événement pour marquer le soutien de la communauté de la recherche française, mais bien au-delà.
European research community during this French presidency of the European Council. This extraordinary project, which I think is one of the biggest European successes, this European Research Council, which was an outlandish idea at the beginning. I would like to pay homage to Mr. Bourguignon, with whom I've spoken a lot, and he found his place. It found its success, and it is now set in the landscape of research and science, and that is also why I'm very happy to be able to be with you after Frédéric Vidal's recognition politically, not as far as interference, but the visibility due to our excellency, our scientific excellence. The ERC embodies not only excellence, form of Europe catching up for financing of excellence, but also in the dire circumstances that we know are happening, the defense of open science, science that is open to the world, with about 20% of researchers who are not citizens of a European country, but who come thanks to the ERC sometimes to take advantage of the openness and to bring to Europe and elsewhere science, discovery, medical research, as we've seen during the pandemic. And this format of open science, of excellence, of knowledge, expertise, knowledge. Of course, it is not a prerogative of Europe, but it is something that we have to keep in mind as a fight, in a way. Nothing is ever set in stone. Democracies can be attacked, tested, instrumentalized by technology or knowledge. We also need, as our European values, you need this model. So especially during the current circumstances, I not only am glad to still be able to come here, but to highlight this message once again and thank everybody who contributes to it. We've seen this during the pandemic. I come from a family of researchers, so I know that this debate can be fraught in the world of science and innovation. Fundamental research deserves to be defended, because this initial research is necessary to the discovery of things that we did not think possible. I think we all need this level of demand and practical research. We've seen this during the pandemic with COVID, in particular with Uğur with his team's work and his wife's work, supported by European budgets, how we were able to have breakthroughs which are not in a small little world, but who benefited our society. And this society was built with accelerations of history, and we were able to change our lives and protect ourselves. If anybody had any doubts, the pandemic reminded us of this. Last week, I was able to visit, on an unrelated note, a very good lab in Nancy, which hosts researchers of many nationalities. One of them is Italian, so talented and enthusiastic, who helped me understand something about energy and matter. I have no pretense that I understood everything, because I don't have the background, but the circulation of people and ideas and the funding in a sustainable way at the right level
financially speaking. For that to be secure is a massive contribution of the ERC. So thank you, dear Jean-Pierre Bourguignon, for your fight that you've led. The budget fight is always the crux of the matter, and we have led it with a few of you. I think France has played its part. It was necessary a few months ago because we had to approve the new European budget for 2021-2027. Specifically to allow the ERC to have not only guaranteed funding, but increased funding. We can do better. I think we will have to do better. I think we are in a budgetary period where a lot of taboos are lifted, and this will contribute to the funding of European science. But I wanted to say today, to talk about these convictions. We are seeing today, when we talk about strategic European autonomy, it is not about looking inward and being isolated. We need others. We need to take in others. We need our researchers to be going around. We need to attract them. This autonomy seen within the relationship to the others, an openness, I think it is one of the best assets in Europe, and I'm glad to see that you are carrying this principle in a very convinced manner. As a minister, I think it is our role to give you the means to do so. We have been doing so, but we will have to continue. I think this is only the beginning. In 15 years, for the 30th anniversary, we will be able to say that it's like the Euro, Schengen, Erasmus, one of the symbols of the success of Europe. At the same time as the 15th anniversary of the ERC, it is the 35th anniversary of Erasmus, and even if you don't benefit from it yourself, it is a symbol of Europe. So we will make the ERC better known, even better known, for those who have benefited, but also those who benefit from it indirectly. So long live the ERC. Thank you to all who have helped us live, who believed in it, and who made the skeptics believe in it. And thank you very much.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, Mr. Minister.
So that's all. We're going to close this YouTube streaming now. We're going to close down the YouTube chat. Thank you very much on behalf of the CNRS, on behalf of the Collège de France, and on behalf of the European Research Council for joining us for this event to mark the 15th anniversary of the ERC. And please go on and continue to participate in the online conversation using the hashtag ERC15years, and feel free to share the video recording of this event, which will be made available shortly via YouTube. Thank you.